14th of December. We're joined in the chamber. I think there's 8-9 councillors in the chamber with us, and the usual online. Not a lot of housekeeping tonight, apart from I'm going to go with matters arising at the start of the meeting tonight, because there isn't a huge agenda, but I say that carefully. We see how we go. So I'm going to go through matters arising at the start of the meeting. Also, at the start of the meeting, I have four items of AOB. We'll see how we go if we get there. I can't guarantee us anything. And we will start off. There was just one announcement today in reference to our broadband locally, and we are going to look to see who call-in user who is. Can you identify yourself, please? Call-in user 2. Take it as Sean, but we better.
Sean Clark. Sean Clark here.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay, bye. Unmuted.
Okay, we'll go into the agenda first of all, and we will go for apologies, and I'll go around the group leaders. And the first person is Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Thank you, Chair. Collier Seamus Green, Collier Siobhan Corey, Collier Stephen McCann, Collier Glenn Campbell, Collier Anne-Marie Fitzgerald, and Collier Catherine Kelly may be joining us late. Remarks, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robert Irvine.
Thank you very much, Chair. No apologies from the Ulster Unionist grouping. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies, but Councillor McCann a bit late.
Thank you. And Councillor Mary Garty. Sorry, Mary, you're sitting. You've changed seats. Okay. Okay. Anybody aware of any apologies from the independent or single member parties? No. Okay, we'll move on. Before we move on, as I say, there was an announcement today, which was quite an important announcement on our broadband on Project Stratum. And I'm not fully over the top of it, but I think it's important to get it out there, because I know we have a broadband working group, I think, tomorrow. So just maybe to get a head start on it. So I'm going to bring in Councillor Alex Baird on this, because he's fairly au fait with what's going on. So Councillor Baird, over to you for a brief to me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. This first came to my notice this morning in listening to the Radio Ulster News, where the Northern Ireland Audit Office had produced a report on broadband, and to a degree were critical of Project Stratum. They saw many strengths but a couple of weaknesses. At the Audit Committee today, we had a discussion about it. It was agreed that we would raise it. It would be raised tonight at this meeting to keep people au fait, as you say, with what's going on. There seem to be two concerns by the Audit Office, and I would say this is the second of two reports on broadband that they have done. The first one was a result of initiation by ICBAN looking at BT and whether or not money should be rolled back as a result of the work they have done. This second report has been prepared, and they're both due for being considered by the Public Accounts Committee of the Executive or the Assembly in January. Now, the concerns are on the numbers of properties covered by the project and the potential that some properties might have been financially viable without funding. Now, as I understand it, about 75 to 79,000 properties were going to be covered by Stratum, but then BT came along and said they could do 16,000. And these 16,000, I believe, were on the list of that 75, 79,000. So this is where the concern comes about spending public money. Now, my concern is we've fought long and hard on this. We've had the issue of this 165 million, which was originally told that would be for the nut and the grey spots, but then there was no action on the assembly at the executive. The permanent secretary made the decision that value for money had to be achieved. Now, when we think of broadband, we think of download, but we've also got to think of upload if we want to encourage the creative industries to come here. So my concern would be if there was a threat for potential for money to be removed from Stratum, we certainly would have to oppose that. If this 16,000 doesn't need to be funded back out of the Stratum money, and bear in mind there was an extra 25 million arrived on money from America or somewhere else about a month ago, that is spread out in those areas where we're not covered by Stratum but have broadband difficulties. So really what I think we should be doing is that the councils involved in Stratum should be getting their heads together this, and indeed with ICBAN, and I suppose have to declare an interest as a director of ICBAN, but to ensure that the money is spent and it's not lost, and that any other worries that we try and resolve them so that a blighted picture, if I put it that way, is not presented to the Public Accounts Committee and cause loss of money. Because, as you know, we've fought long and hard on Stratum. It's been a difficult route, but as you drive around the countryside, the number of vans that are laying fibre optic cables, it's all there, so things are happening. So I'll leave it at that. I see Bernice and John, who are on the audit committee, have their hands up as well.
Yeah,
But
before we go any further in this, we are having a meeting tomorrow, and both Fibrous and DFC are sending representatives to the meeting. So I only wanted to give a heads up on this. I don't want to get into a big debate on it tonight because we have a hefty agenda. Councillor Coyle, two quick comments from yourself and Councillor Swift, please, but keep them very brief.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, I'll be brief. Yeah, we raised it this morning at the audit panel, and it's very concerning because local neighbours and everything else are,
Sorry, I have a point of order. Hold on. Councillor Maguire.
Gurmagad, Victor, sorry to interrupt John in his flow there, but I'm just questioning, you have allowed this issue in, and to me, I would have considered that it was an AOB. It's not on the agenda, and you're allowing a conversation to take place. Given that there is a meeting tomorrow, could I suggest that any further update should be brought to that group tomorrow?
Okay.
And can then be fed back properly. As you say, Chair, there is hefty enough agenda, and it is beyond our procedures normally to address something at this stage that's not on the agenda.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
The reason I did bring it up was because it is an important issue, and I know we have a hefty agenda tonight. So what we will do, we will leave it then, Councillor Coyle and Councillor Swift, and we'll obviously have a chance to air our feelings tomorrow on what we're thinking. We'll move on with the agenda, and the next thing is item 2, and that is to sign the minutes and the confidential minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of November, which has already been done. And next now, item 3 is declarations of interest. Councillor Maguire.
Victor, 8.2, I believe it relates to planning, so therefore as a member of the planning committee, I'd declare an interest.
Councillor Swift is coming in here with a point of order. Can you unmute Councillor Swift, please? Sorry. Councillor Swift, do you want to
Yeah.
take order?
That's it. Gurmagat, Caroline. Well, point of order being you had already ruled, Victor, to have quick brief notes permitted to myself and John Coyle. So just on that, I will go and we appreciate you doing that. Alex Baird had already clearly outlined. But the importance of it being raised at tonight's meeting wasn't just about a heads up. It was very much the fact that Project Stratum was developed to improve the connectivity for rural areas and for those of us unable and our constituents to access broadband services of 30 megas. And the thing about it is, you know, we were all pretty excited about this delivery model to us, but the very fact that national broadband does 5 times the speed, this is becoming now rather paltry, and Auditor General this evening is viewing it as not public value for public money. The question that needs to be put to Fibrous representatives tomorrow must be, they provided our council and our elected reps that they would most definitely string fibre to all premises. And that was given as an assurance, and it was made directly because I asked the question myself. That's how I know. So tomorrow, please ensure that that question is put clearly, firmly and clearly to them, because we have lots of complaints from lots of constituents about the issues already. Gurmagat.
Okay, Councillor Swift, thank you. Okay, back to the agenda to declaration of interests. Next, we have Councillor Robert Irvine.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'd like to declare an interest in the following items on the agenda. 6.1, and it's at 2.1.2 as being a member of the Endoskeleton Public Realm Scheme. 8.2 as a member of the Planning Committee. Possibly 8.3 as the chair of the LDP steering group and a member of the LDP oversight panel. And 12.1 as a representative on the Mid-South-West growth deal. Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask you this also tonight before we move on, not to put anything in the chat apart from IT problems or a point of order, as it's very difficult to, it's very easily missed. Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. 6.2 is a member of one of the groups listed.
Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Thomas O'Reilly.
8.2 Planning, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Mary Gardy.
Thank you, Chair. 8.2 Planning, and also 6.2 as member of one of the groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard Thornton.
Thank you, Chair. 5.4, review of grant aid, and 6.1 with regard to public realm scheme.
Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, 5.4, it's to do with the grant aid, but I'm a member of the grant aid appeals panel. Just make a note of 6.3 and 6.4 and 6.2 as well, as a member of the LDP, the Gordon Glen Steering Group and the Strategic Planning Board. And as previous members said, there's 6.2 as a member of the newly crowned Division 2 champions, Greencastle. Just to declare an interest there. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Josephine Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Item 8.2 as a member of the Planning Committee, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Paul Robinson.
(8.2) Planning and 8.3 LPD. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Earl Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. 6.3, member of the Gordon Glen Steering Group. 6.4, member of the Community Planning Strategic Partnership Board. 8.2, member of the Planning Committee. 8.3, member of the LDP Steering Group. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor John Mcclury.
Thank you, Chair. 8.2 Planning Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Rainey.
Point two, Chair. Planning.
8.2. Okay, thank you. Councillor Barry McElduff.
New Chair, 6.4 Community Planning, 8.2 Planning Committee, and the LDP 8.3 and 12.1 as well, and steering group.
Thank you. Councillor Anthony Feely.
Thank you, Chair. 8.2 member of the Planning Committee.
Councillor Deanna Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Item 6.4 is a member of the Community Planning Strategic Partnership, and 8.3 is a member of the LDP.
Councillor Donald O'Coffey.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. 8.3 LDP membership. Sure.
Councillor John Coyle.
Thank you, Chair. 8.2 member of the Planning Committee. Thank you.
Councillor Bert Wilson. Councillor Wilson. We'll come back to you. We'll go to Councillor Thomas O'Reilly.
Chair, 6.4 on the community planning and 8.3 on the LDP.
Okay, Councillor Bernice Swift.
Yes, thank you, Gurmangel Victor. Can you advise just then, I know you've said about not putting any messages into the chat. Tell me then if it's a case where, you know, like that, I need to highlight a point of order or jump in if you're doing something, record to be dissent. How can we do that when we're locked?
What I'm saying is it's liable to be missed. We'll try obviously not to miss it, but you have to remember we're looking at 2 screens up here, plus we're looking at the number, so we're doing our best.
Oh, I know that, but if something like that goes into the chat, because there's no other way to do it when being locked out.
No.
Right. Okay, then that's fine. Thanks.
We'll watch it. We'll watch it with another screen here. We can watch it on. Councillor Wilson. Bert. We're not hearing anything, Bert. Use unmute him, guys. Bert, click on your screen. It says unmute on your screen. Can you click on that, please?
Now, yes, I can't unmute myself, but I have, obviously somebody has sorted that out. 6.3, the Gordon Glen Steering Group, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the agenda, and the first thing, sorry, also I'll say on the outset as well, as previous meetings, items 8, 7 and 8 are reports for noting only, no discussions on those tonight, just for reporting only, and if you need to query anything on them, you can return to the directors involved. Thank you. Okay, next up is matters arising from the minutes of the 9th of November meeting, and we'll first of all we'll go through it. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. and page 8 and page 9. No matters arising. Thank you. We will now move on to item number 5, and that is the Community and Wellbeing Directorate reports. And the first up is 5.1 is to consider report on bilingual signage at ancient cemeteries, paper A. And Councillor Mcclury, you have your hand up. Is it basically to come in at the back on the back of this report?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Can you minimise that chat, guys, please? Thank you. Okay, we'll pass over to Kim for Alison, sorry, for paper A. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just we've an apology this evening from the Director of Community and Wellbeing, so just reporting on his behalf. Chair, this report follows on from previous report to the Council in October to Environmental Services, and this was specifically around the report on proposed signage at the ancient cemeteries. So members will have seen from the report that there was a query specifically regarding Council officers' interpretation of the signage approach that was proposed. There was then subsequent discussion at the Irish Language and Ulster Scots Policy Working Group on the 8th of November. And at that meeting, it was recognised that there was no policy position on the use of bilingual signage. However, the working group concluded that it would be appropriate that signage at the ancient cemeteries should have the names of the cemeteries in both Irish and English. So in summary then, Chair, the recommendations are that the Council approves the bilingual signage and its application to the ancient cemeteries, approves that QR codes will be used as part of any interpretation, and approves that facilities and boundary signage is reflected in the revised linguistic diversity policy.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mcclury.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we'd agreed this at the meeting of the working group, and as there is no policy in place, as Alison has outlined, I have a few queries in relation to the full report, and obviously 3.1, where the place name specialists have agreed to do this work pro bono. Given that part of the salaries of the Irish language officers will no longer be funded, and their salaries are going to be fully met by the council, will their terms of employment change and their role description? And if so, will they be able to do the research work given the anticipated increase in demand in this type of work? And the in-house would obviously create with the current personnel would be a massive saving for the council. I know that the current Irish language programmes and plans are COVID affected, but basically that hasn't changed and has changed very little since I first came on board the council when I got elected in 2019. So it seems as though they've done the groundwork already. I mean, and that maybe reflects the fact that this funder is withdrawing the funding, that they've now set up a programme for the Irish language speakers, and basically it's just a matter of
Councillor Mcclury was in full flow whenever we went down, so we'll go back to Councillor Mcclury. The Chief Executive did give a response, but I don't think he heard it. So we'll go back to Councillor Mcclury.
Thank you, Chair. Do you want me to start from the beginning, or?
No.
Where have you got to?
Yeah.
Chair, we had heard Councillor Mcclury up to the role of the Irish language officers and the potential for their work, the job descriptions to be reviewed to also include the translation facilities, and at that point I think the connection went down.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Executive. Chair, will I continue from there on then?
Yeah, please.
Rough idea here. I'll just get my notes sorted. Yeah, so, and then if we go on then to 3.2, the dedicated project worker, is that a temporary post? What is their remit going to be? And there's a number of significant historic Christian and pagan religious sites which currently seem to fall outside the remit of this project. And I'm wondering if they're going to be, is there a chance that they're going to be included? I'm not going to propose this paper. I'm going to leave that to Councillor Maguire, but if he did propose it, I would second it as he was the chair of the working group. And obviously, I'm waiting the response. Obviously, Alison has a response from me as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Chair, so I'm conscious Councillor Mcclury may not have heard the response in terms of the role of the Irish language officers. So in relation to this project, Place Names NI have indicated their wish to work with the council on a pro bono basis, and that's certainly something we would wish to continue to explore. In terms of the roles of the Irish language officers, it wouldn't routinely be the case that we need to review job descriptions just because funding streams have changed. Obviously, if there's a change in duties or responsibilities, we would do so, but we would be hoping as part of their work and obviously the obligations that we've set out within our own Irish Language Action Plan, that we will be maximising the available resource from those officers. And in terms of the officer referenced at section 3.2 of the report, Chair, yes, that is a temporary, it's fixed term post, envisaged to be 2 years. The specific focus is on the delivery of the Lough Erne Pilgrimage Trail. And there are obviously a number of ancient sites, including cemeteries, as part of that work. There may be some other allied activity as part of that role, but the primary focus will be on the delivery of the Lough Erne Pilgrimage Trail.
Okay, thank you for that. Are you happy with that response, Councillor Mcclury? We will go now to Councillor Bert Wilson. Councillor Wilson, I'll wave back at you, Councillor Wilson. Can you see that request on your screen, Councillor Wilson? We'll come back to you, Councillor Wilson. We'll go to Councillor Maguire.
Aguramaga Kerley, August Molam and Rinshaw. I'm happy to propose the recommendations, Chair. Aguramaga, thank you.
Thank you. We will go to Councillor Chris McCaffrey.
Gormagat, a Caherly Tommy Brasas, the Takiakdianav Leshan Molu Shaw. Happy to support also. I take on board some of the commentary from Councillor Mcclury. I know that our Irish language officers are doing good work. I think in some sense it is a wee bit unrealistic to expand the job definition to that of translation. Translation in itself is a very difficult remit. Unfortunately, lots of words and meanings have been lost in the Anglicization of the Irish place names. If the original Irish isn't known, if it isn't known from historical texts or shown on maps or in other literature, it is very difficult to go back and find the original Irish. You have to use the topography of the area and perhaps other signposts or noticeable features of the area. So it is in itself, I mean, academically, universities still on a full-time basis are engaged in this work. So, I do think that our Irish language officers' main job is to promote the Irish language across the district. The translations which have unfortunately been lost down to this Anglicization, I think that's a broader bit of work. So but I do accept that we should be doing as much in-house as possible. So again, just happy to support. Obviously, I want to see Irish promoted right across the district in all communities and all parts of Fermanagh. The language is for everyone. We can all benefit and we can all gain from the language. And so I'm glad to see Councillor Mcclury and his colleagues and others supporting this as well. Gormagad.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Somebody has unmuted me. No, I would just ask a couple of questions to do with what questions that have been asked to me by constituents. And what extra cost is this going to be to the ratepayers? Have we any idea what cost is going to be? And it's not whether I'm not saying Irish, but I would say Irish and Ulster Scots. The extra cost that this is going to put on our ratepayers, and nobody seems to have a clue as to what it is in staff time and financial constraints. So it's something that I would like on behalf of the constituents that I represent as to what is going to cost the ratepayers out there at a time when we have so severe constraints on our health service, when we can't get the potholes filled in our roads and that, and it's just something that they would like to know what they are going to have to pay for something that a lot of them probably don't want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah,
Alison's going to respond.
Chair, just to confirm, the financial implications are detailed in the report. So the translation services are on a pro bono, free of charge basis by Place Names Northern Ireland, and the signs will cost approximately £350 each for procurement and installation. And Chair, just for clarity, I think we do need to confirm more for listeners. Obviously, as Councillor Wilson will be aware, the Council doesn't have responsibility for potholes or related matters, and financial provision to support the delivery of this project is included within our budgets.
Thank you for that. And the final speaker on this is Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be brief as well. Oh, just to make a few comments on the recommendations and what's before us. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't in attendance at the meeting on the 8th of November, the working group, just to voice my concern. But I would have been happy with the original proposal that it was English only, and I'm glad to see we're going down the route of a QR code as well as part of the signage. I feel that we don't need the Irish language on it, or as Councillor Wilson said, if we're going with the Irish, we should include the Ulster Scots as well, because like many in the chamber and online tonight would wish to put forth the Irish language, there's many from my community who would wish to see the Ulster Scots on there as well. So just to make you aware, Chair, that our party grouping would be against the recommendation 1 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, we've had a proposal. We haven't had a seconder for the recommendations yet. I'm going to bring in Councillor O'Coffey here first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's very positive that we're finding a way to celebrate some of our shared cultural inheritance. I think it's, from my understanding of place names, approximately 10% of place names are not Irish in origin. They're actually, most of them would be from Norse languages, and some may even have linguistic origins preceding the Irish language, as it is now known. The Gaelic language was a later arrival than some earlier languages that were spoken on this island. So I think it's, and hence there is a problem around those 10%, because often the translations of those are particularly difficult because those languages are not fully spoken or aware of in any way. So I think it's wider than just any one community, and I think that this is something that hopefully will place everyone, will have a identification with, and that we will be able to celebrate together. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Coffey. Councillor Mcclury, are you coming in to second the proposal?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As I indicated, I was deferring to allow Councillor Maguire to propose it. We did have a working group on this. It's unfortunate that not all the councillors had been to it, and there is no additional cost. The signs are going to have to go up. There is a minimal amount of Irish. It's actually just the name in Irish going onto it. There's no other Irish going onto it. So I think we came to a reasonable agreement, and I'm happy that we go with the proposal. So I'm seconding.
Okay, thank you for that. We've heard it proposed and seconded. I'm not allowing anybody else in on this. With Kim, the proposer and the seconder. Is everybody in agreement? So everybody is in agreement with the proposal, with the exception of the Democratic Unionist grouping. Okay, that's it. We'll move on. Next on the agenda is 5.2 is the Platinum Jubilee 2022. And again, it's over to Alison.
Thank you, Chair. So Paper B sets out the proposed arrangements for the Platinum Jubilee 2022, which falls primarily really around the weekend of the 2nd to the 5th of June 2022 and marks the 70th anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II's accession to the throne. So detailed in the report, Chair, are the proposed approaches, and really it's suggested that the Council will adopt the same approach as was approved for the Northern Ireland Centenary 2021 events. And the recommendations are that the Council adopts the community-focused and community-led approach for the Platinum Jubilee 2022, amends the guidance notes for the event sponsorship and grant aid schemes to indicate Jubilee-related events and activities are eligible for funding, to note the existing plans on Council property for the Jubilee, agrees the illumination of the Endoskeleton Castle and Strual Arts Centre on the 2nd of June 2022, and also, if offered, that the Council would accept support from central or regional government to defray any costs associated with the Jubilee.
Thank you. Councillor Thornton.
Chair, the Queen's the longest reigning British monarch and the longest serving female head of state in history. We all will benefit from the additional public holiday to celebrate this achievement. The Queen has been an influential ambassador in terms of reconciliation during her regular visits to Northern Ireland and indeed her visit to the Republic of Ireland. Hopefully this anniversary can be welcomed by all and take place with local cross-community participation, and I thereby recommend the recommendations as outlined. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Eamon Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I would not support any of this, and I don't believe the majority of the people in my community would support it either. As a working class person who has a hunger for democracy, I think it's the very notion of a royal family is an insult to democracy, and it's an insult to equality. How can we claim to live in a society of equals if a handful of people are ascended by alleged birthright to such positions of power and wealth? What's to celebrate? The subjugation of the majority of the population, the vast inequality in the lifestyles, or the exploitation and the oppression that is synonymous with the British monarchy throughout the centuries across the globe? So it's a no thanks from me. I think it's a divisive distraction, and I think given the current difficulties and hardship that many people in our district are facing, that this is an unwanted and unneeded waste of money. And I propose that we do not waste any ratepayers' money on this at all. Thank you.
Councillor Diana Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. And just to put this in context, there are only three prior monarchs who reached the Platinum Jubilee. The most recent was King Bhumibol of Thailand from 1946 to 2016. This is, as my colleague said, Her Majesty the Queen is the oldest living and longest reigning current monarch. And I think from a point of view of a person who has dedicated her life and is an exemplar of dedication to duty, that this is something that we should recognise. I know it may not be acceptable in some parts of the community, but I do feel that Her Majesty's last visit to Endoskeleton was very, very well received. She made a historic passage from St. Macartan's Cathedral to St. Michael's, and I know that among the parishioners that gesture was very, very well received. She has a deep sense of civic duty. She has outlived 14, she has had 14 prime ministers serve her. She has had visits to or received 5 popes. I think for someone who is held in such high regard globally, I think it is, I think it's something that we can celebrate or at least show admiration for. And I think people will also welcome the extended bank holiday weekend. So I certainly would be happy to second the proposal. Thank you, and the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Swift.
Guramagat Cahirlock, and I serve neither king nor kaiser, and I suppose I am not going to be in support of a rejoicing of any monarch, the Queen of England, in this instance. And I suppose the old saying by James Connolly, the great only appear great when the rest of us are on our knees. And during this reign, there has been lots of poverty. There's homelessness. We have food banks. We have so much as a result of imperialism in our land. And as a devoted Irish Republican, I cannot be supportive of such a rejoicing of this platinum jubilation. I want to be recorded as dissenting strongly from this. I am opposed. And I do have a question, as it was debated the other evening, and it's on the point where it talks about the musical tattoo. And there was a difference of opinion between a few members, where one said it was military musical tattoo, and I think it was Diana did explain it was the Scottish Pipe Band would be playing. Can I please have clarification on that? It's on point 2.3, the last bullet point about the musical tattoo. I am opposing regardless, but I would like that clarification. Guramagat.
Okay. Sorry, can we identify caller user 3, please?
Hello, Councillor Sean Clark.
John, are you deliberately trying to make it get us, or what are you doing? We'll go over to the Chief Executive.
Sean Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, my understanding is it's pipe band music in terms of the tattoo, but we can certainly investigate that further, Chair, and report back to Environmental Services next month.
Okay, Councillor Robert Irvine.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's unfortunate that there is a dissent in the chamber, but I fully understand that, and I appreciate the councillors that have expressed opinion and the stance that they're coming from. If they are so principled, then I presume they won't be availing of the opportunity for an additional public holiday when it does come around. But then again, it's up to them in regard to their principles, but I will be supporting the proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I suppose it is disappointing that there's division in the chamber, and I suppose as Chair of Council on this particular year, I would have to say that I very much support the Platinum Jubilee, and especially the events coming up in proposed events in Endoskeleton, which I think would be very welcomed by many across our district. I know there will be differences of opinion, and people have a right to have a difference of opinion. I stood on a platform of respect, equality and fairness for all, special privileges for none, but some people would try to stop people of my community having any events such as that. But I'm prepared to support it, and I look forward to it happening, and I think I speak on behalf of a fair number of people within our district. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garrity.
Thank you, Chair, and listen to the comments. Thanks for everyone's comments to date. Alison, if I could just have a bit of clarity here, and I do respect everyone's views on this issue, those that wish to celebrate it and those that may not feel that's to their nature. The cost to this to the council will be minimal, I assume, or could you give us kind of an indication? Because again, that's where I would come from. As long as it wasn't an astronomical cost to the council, our ratepayers wouldn't appreciate that, especially those that wouldn't celebrate such an event. Obviously, those that wouldn't mind, but if it's a minimal cost, I can't see there being much of an issue, but that would be my concern. So some clarity on finance, thank you. I know there's a bit in the report, but just if you could elaborate.
Chair, the intention is that really what we would be doing would be allowing applications for the Platinum Jubilee to be considered as part of the normal grant aid calls. So it would be dependent upon the applications received within the available budget. There is a possibility that the council may receive funding from central government. And if that was the case, we would obviously defray the costs, we would hope in full, but of any applications received. So we wouldn't be intending to add additional budgets to this, Chair. It would be met within the existing grant aid budgets unless additional funding would be secured from central government or other sources.
Okay, you've heard it, the recommendations proposed and seconded. We've had 2 members that are going to Dissentford. Is there anybody else or is happy enough with the recommendations, the proposal? Yeah, it's passed. Councillor Keenan, you had a proposal, but there was no seconder in that. And so we're going to move on. Thank you. Councillor Mcclury is abstaining. O'Copy, sorry. Is your getting to me? Okay, next up is item 5.3. Is to I see hands up, Councillor Keenan, Councillor Feely and Councillor Swift, and Councillor O'Reilly. Is this on this next item? Or is this on the item which we've just concluded with?
I believe Councillor Swift seconded my proposal.
No, she didn't second it, no. I had no seconder when Councillor Swift spoke on it.
I did second it, Victor. I put it into the chat because I'm locked out of this.
Well, sorry.
Long ago.
Sorry, the chat, as I said earlier on, is for the reasons it's for. It's very hard to keep your eye on everything.
Well, I perceive that to be just disingenuous, Victor. I put it in the chat quite a number of minutes ago, and there are officers present who are there to assist you. So it was loud and clear in the chat. Everybody in the chat has spotted it. So it's not an accurate minute to be recorded to say that Councillor Keenan didn't have a seconder, because I did second it. And, you know, others should verify that.
Sorry, if I can just clarify the situation. I made it clear at the start of the meeting that the chat was for points of order and for IT problems, nothing else. So if you did put it seconded in the chat, I didn't accept it. So we.
So you either didn't hear it or you didn't accept it, Victor. You know, you're not consistent. You're not being consistent.
Councillor Swift, please.
Yeah, you're not being consistent.
I'm sorry.
That's flagrantly unfair. I perceive blatant discrimination from you on this score.
Councillor Feely?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, I'm against that last recommendation there, and I was trying to get in there as well, and Bernice did second that, I seen on the chat. I know it's not easy seeing all up there. I made a mistake myself a week or two ago.
We've moved on. We've moved on this item. We're now on to 5.3. You know, we'll go now to paper C, and that is to consider. And could you, anybody that has hands up, please take them down. Thank you. To consider report on the proposed changes for leisure facilities and activities with effect from the 1st of April 21, paper C, until the 31st of March 23.
Chair, just to, I suppose, go to the key issues here in light of the likelihood for further ongoing restrictions associated with COVID and the need for further post-COVID recovery. It's proposed that the pricing structure for 22-23 financial year remains at the current level, so no increase is proposed, Chair, and recommended accordingly that the Council approves the charges for the use of the leisure facilities and for the provision of activities with effect for the financial year 2022-23.
Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair, and happy to propose the recommendation, and just want to comment that I welcome the note in the report to say that officers are going to continue to look at other measures to maybe look at cost savings for specific groups who may benefit from reduced charges, but happy to propose the recommendation as it is.
Thank you. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second it. I'm very happy that we as a council are effectively freezing the prices that are charged for access to leisure services that we provide. Given the rising inflation, I think that this is very welcome. Effectively, it means a real terms reduction in costs to access these services. And I think it's very important considering the COVID pandemic, what we've gone through, but also the health challenges that we're entering into as a result of the COVID, that it's important that we encourage people, especially from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, to access our services and to improve their health outcomes as a direct result. So very happy to second this, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Irvine.
Thank you very much, Chair. Happy to support the proposal as duly seconded by Councillor Coffey. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm happy to support the proposal, Chair, and welcome it. I agree with members who say that we should do everything that we can to facilitate a broad range of constituents using our services due to the very significant health benefits of physical activity, Chair. So I welcome this recommendation and support it. Thank you.
Okay, and the last speaker in this, Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose just never get to speak in there, but I do believe that Councillor Swift did second the previous.
Sorry, Councillor McAleer, we've moved on. We've moved on. We've moved on. We've moved on. Sorry? Okay.
So I just have a quick query, and I'm happy enough with the what previous speakers have said, but just in Appendix 1, the first page of it, there's a note that the youth rate applies Monday to Friday until 6:30 p.m. And I'm just wondering, is there any reason why it doesn't apply until the close of the leisure centres, why it cuts off at that particular time? Chair.
Chair, that was based really on our operational activity in the general pattern, and the youth activity is primarily focused up to that period of time, so it had the most impact to that stage. Beyond that time, it's more adult use comes in, so that was deemed to be the most appropriate times. Has worked well, and there's been no queries around it.
Okay, thank you. You've heard it proposed and seconded that we accept the recommendations. Is everybody happy with that? Okay, we'll move on to item 5.4, review of grant aid programmes, paper D.
Chair, this follows on from some work that had been undertaken as part of a lean review, really to streamline our grant processes and also to ensure there'd be a fairly widespread impact. And I suppose the informal approach to this, we had some consultation with members, firstly in April of this year and subsequently with the Community and Voluntary Sector Forum in September, and the proposals were positively received. So really working through this, Chair, we are proposing a number of relatively minor amendments, but which we think will be quite significant in terms of the beneficiaries. The first is to the Community Premises Support Grant Aid Scheme, which you will see the intention is that we would have that move across to a Community Services Revenue Programme. That was the current scheme. The new one will be under Community Support Grant Aid. We would combine a number of smaller programmes, which would be Community Services General, festivals and events, arts, culture and heritage and sports programming, and that would come under the Community and Wellbeing Grant Aid and would largely mirror the Recover programme, which we found to be quite agile and responsive in terms of community needs. The summer scheme grants would be replaced by a summer scheme fund, and finally the Partnership Delivery Fund, which would be a more strategic fund we would envisage being delivered ideally on a multi-annual basis subject to funding, but certainly on at least an annual basis, and that would be linked directly to our community planning and corporate planning actions and outcomes. Sports events and Culture Night and European Heritage Open Days would now be dealt with by way of sponsorship arrangements, and that has certainly been the feedback that we have received from organisers in the past. So that really is the summary, Chair, and recommending to members that the Council would approve the proposed changes to the grant aid programmes as outlined in the report, and that these would take effect from April 2022.
Councillor Wilson. Baird, speak.
Yes, Chair, I can't know what the problem is, but it's just not happening. Firstly, I would welcome all the grant aid that has been over the years. The activities that for young people and I suppose for elderly ones as well, or that has been severely constrained with the COVID. And this is to be welcomed, and I would propose that this be approved. It's really, I don't know, I'm sure in the local urban areas, but in the rural part where most of us are out and haven't got so much facilities, it is really to be welcomed. So, as I say, I would propose that we accept the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Next up, we have Councillor Donald O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this. I take it that was a proposal there. Just two queries very briefly. The first is the community premises support grant aid, which is meant for those community organisations which have their own premises. There doesn't seem to be an upper limit for allocation on that. Second question is the community and wellbeing grant aid is for community groups which don't have their own premises and are obviously renting those from other organisations. I'm just wondering, how is it that we will ensure that there is no duplication of funding for the same cost, if you get me? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, in terms of the duplication question, it's something that's actually captured on the application form, both in terms of the venue hire and the associated cost, but would be something we'd be sensitive to. In terms of the upper limit, I don't believe that's been defined as yet, but certainly we can come back. But my expectation would be that would be likely to be in the region of £2,000 to £3,000, but we would report back on that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas O'Reilly.
Thanks, Chair. Just on 2.2.1, the community premises support grant aid, while I welcome the streamlining, I'm just looking a little clarification on this is actually adding to those that rent the council premises to put in one for their running costs, and then they have to put in a second application for the service provision that they provide in it. Could I just have a little understanding from Alison as to the rationale behind that?
No, I don't think the intention here would be, Chair, that for community groups which have their own premises, and I suppose this was actually to recognise a number, the council obviously has a number of facilities or operates on service level agreement with other in parts of the district, and it was to regularise the arrangements for groups that have their own facilities but have no direct council support for them. So that would be the primary purpose of the first one. In terms of the programme of activity, if there is a programme of activity over and above normal hire costs, maybe if they needed tutors or equipment, specific equipment, then that would really be part of normal community services as opposed to anything to do with the upkeep of the building. So I think it was really primarily to deal with the difference between the groups that benefit from council owned or operated facilities and groups that have the costs associated with their own. So I don't see it as I think it's widening the field for those groups. I don't think it's doubling the effort for them, Chair. If I've interpreted Councillor O'Reilly's question correctly.
Chair, a specific example would be Newton Butler community association and they rent obviously or lease or have an agreement with the council for the community centre, and then if they wish to they cover for their running costs there under the first application, and then to provide any service thereafter from the centre, if they wish grant aid, then they would need to come in under the community wellbeing grant aid.
But previously, Chair, they wouldn't have had the same flexibility or the same option to provide or to make application for direct support for the running costs. So there would always, it would depend largely on their programme of activity in terms of the community and wellbeing grant aid. And this, I suppose, has recognised the feedback from groups that the approach and recover actually allowed local needs to emerge and be supported quite quickly. And that would be the intent here, whereas the community premises support grant aid should be largely predictable in terms of what the needs of a group would be on a year-to-year basis.
No, or that's fair enough. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, and finally we have Councillor Matthew Bell.
Sorry, Chair. I just planned to second the recommendations, but I've been beaten to it. As a word of comment, I just want to welcome the kind of focus on flexibility of the community and wellbeing grant. Generally, I think sometimes inflexibility acts to the detriment of community groups, and this focus on flexibility, I think, will be a benefit to the various community groups who do apply for it.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, you've heard the recommendations proposed and seconded. Does everybody agree? Okay, we'll move on to item 5.5, and that's to consider the report of the Director of Community and Wellbeing, paper E.
Thank you, Chair. Just one item, and I suppose I would just preface my comments by saying we do recognise the situation in relation to COVID is very fluid, but the report before you deals with the request as currently presented by the Western Health and Social Care Trust. So that is really to support the ongoing delivery of the booster campaign. It will be continuous use of Fermanagh Lakeland Forum from the 1st of December to the 14th, and continued use of Oma Leisure Complex from the 15th until the 21st of December. Then ad hoc use of both leisure centres until the 31st of January. So recommending, Chair, that the use as identified in the report is supported by the Council.
Okay, thank you. First up with Councillor Diana Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I do intend to propose recommendation of the report and also to put on record continued thanks to everybody involved in this massive operation. And obviously, as the Chief Executive has indicated, things are changing and we have no control over what the needs will be in the future. Just if I could ask for some latitude, Chair, please. It's an allied subject. It's really on the subject of COVID volunteers. I was listening to the radio this morning and they talked about the need for people to direct traffic, people to direct people coming in for vaccination and support staff. And just really asking the question what the Council is doing to assist. I know it falls within the PHA and the Trust, but what the Council is doing to assist where there is interest in becoming a volunteer, if it's something we could message out, because the Council is looked to during this time for information and just to increase public awareness should we have volunteers who want to come forward. Thank you, Chair. And with that, I'll propose the recommendations.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair, in terms of the specifics around volunteer provisions, certainly the Council would work closely with a number of volunteering organisations, both in Oma and in Fermanagh, and as well with Volunteer Now. The current ask that we have from the Western Health and Social Care Trust is really around coordinated messaging about the importance of the vaccination campaign. So ideally for those who have not received the first or second dose to present themselves at the soonest available opportunity, those who are in a position to get the booster to do so. We haven't been asked as yet around volunteer or other support, but certainly if that is a request made by the Trust to us, we would be very happy to communicate that out on our social media and other platforms. We are receiving probably daily messages for pushing out, Chair, and I know those are being progressed, and there is an effort to try and have a coordinated campaign across the public sector that we can support healthcare colleagues at this time. So certainly, Councillor Armstrong, it hasn't come to us as yet. We would be happy to do so, but in the event that we got any specific inquiries regarding volunteer effort, we would be able to signpost those appropriately within our existing networks.
Thank you. Councillor O'Coffey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously the situation with the recent development of the and the unfortunate spread of the Omicron variant has transformed everything in terms of the risk that is posed. It is unfortunately spreading exponentially across the population, and it is greatly concerning. It's led to a situation in the last few days where world leaders have announced measures to take steps necessary to put vaccines into arms as quickly as we can, and I think it's positive that that outcome's being achieved. But I think that what we have before us is a very big missed opportunity. With that in mind, I note from the report that the presence of vaccine facilities in Fermanagh come to an end today. They will not return. They will not be back before the 30th of January. At that point, it will take 2 weeks for vaccines to actually gain effect. We are now facing the prospect of students coming from across the world back home to their families, potentially carrying this Omicron variant. And I think it's absolutely imperative that this council takes a stand and demands that this is not the way that this is taken forward. We have a system whereby previously, because of the lack of demand, and that was understandable perhaps, that there was a 2-week variation between Omagh and Endoskeleton, but there's no way that that is now acceptable. So I would like to propose that while we should revert to the trust and state, while £2,500 a week is a lot of money, it's not worth the health of our community. The quality impact assessment.
1 second, Councillor O'Coffey.
Chair, maybe just to clarify, I've circulated to members information that we received earlier today from the Western Trust in terms of the vaccination programme, and certainly my reading of it is that it sets out all of the arrangements up to and including Christmas, and thereafter from the 29th of December, the vaccinations return to the Lakeland Forum.
It's far too late. My point is that it takes 2 weeks after that date for these vaccines to have any impact at all. We are going to have 4 weeks without any vaccines being locally accessible in Fermanagh, and that is not acceptable. I would like to propose that we as a council request both a provision in Enniskillen and Omagh, that we make our facilities available in both cases, but that we need to force the trust to provide this in an ongoing manner immediately in both Enniskillen and Omagh is what I'm saying. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, just on a point of accuracy, I think certainly the latter part of what Councillor O'Coffey has said, but just to confirm, the information conveyed to members is that the closure is from the 15th, which is tomorrow, resuming on the 29th, which is 2 weeks as opposed to 4 weeks. I'm not disputing the delay, but I think Councillor O'Coffey had indicated previously the end of January. So it's just to be accurate.
Well, if I said the wrong thing, but what I'm saying is it takes 2 weeks for the vaccine to actually have effect. So that means it's a 4 week, because we're losing 2 weeks now and we'll have another 2 weeks. That's where my 4 weeks come from. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, next up we have Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I just wanted to come in just to say to pay tribute to those who have been involved in the booster campaign so far, just particularly as we're facing into the winter and we are dealing with the emergence of Omicron. And I'm just more than happy to just second the proposal at this stage.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alison, for your report. Well, I want to support the recommendation and also to support Councillor O'Coffey's proposal that there shouldn't be any break in the availability of mass vaccination centres in both Omagh and for Endoskeleton during the month of December. As other members have said, Chair, we are really entering a period of great uncertainty in the COVID-19 pandemic, and we are all aware of the very high rates of transmission of the Omicron variant. Initial studies have suggested that the course of the Omicron variant illness is likely to be less severe compared with the Delta variant, but nevertheless there still have been some deaths reported. Councillor O'Coffey is quite right in what he says, in that it does take some weeks for immunity to build up after the booster vaccine is given. And there is evidence to suggest that for people who have had 2 primary vaccines, that this will not be sufficient to protect them from the Omicron variant. So I think it's absolutely essential that as large a number of people avail of the booster vaccinations, and that will afford them protection of their families, and more widespread protection within the community. And I think that the more centres that we have available, either through the mass vaccination centres provided by the trusts, through our local pharmacists or GPs, all these facilities will be required to get all the people properly vaccinated and protected. So I certainly support this recommendation and that of Councillor O'Coffey, Chair. Thank you.
You're seconding Councillor O'Coffey's proposal, the second proposal as well, Councillor Deehan? Yeah, okay. Next we have Councillor Bernice Swift.
Maggot Kerlock, and I would be supportive of the previous 2 speakers on this issue. The very fact that the statistics already have identified that there have been 10 cases, probably more now, of Omicron in our state is concerning. And I note also that people have raised the issue of the closure now of our mass vaccination centre at the Lakeland Forum. I would just wonder and ask Alison, is it a resourcing issue, or has the problem been that there haven't been the attendees and hence the 2-week break? Because I too am very aware once booster is given, it takes 2 weeks to kick in and provide the immunity, the necessary immunity. So I would be supportive of the need. Possibly there isn't the demand, and we understand there are various reasons for that, but it looks like it's wholly necessary. And I just wonder, Alison, if you can give some further advice on that, if known. Guramagat.
Chair, I would be speculating, but my suspicion is that it is more to do with capacity than demand, but that's certainly something that we can follow up directly with the Trust tomorrow. And if I'm in a position to update members tomorrow evening, I'll certainly do so.
Councillor Mcclury.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I was coming in the second Councillor O'Coffey because I know it was supported, but I don't know how explicit we have to be when second proposals here tonight. Just in relation to the comments made and the queries raised, the cost that's been charged, or the price that's been levied at the trust of £2,500 per week, I'm wondering if this is having an impact on the availability or the provision that has been given to this district area, because obviously where it was present for 2 weeks in the Lakeland Forum and now for just under a week in the leisure centre here in Omagh, is that playing into it? Is it, as Councillor Swift rightly asked, is it a resource issue? Is it an expenditure issue? Because to my mind, charging one of our trusts when the NHS is undergoing the expenditure that is currently going, the crisis it's in, sounds like quite a hefty fee to be charging for council facility, but possibly that's something that can be expanded on or elaborated on. Thank you, Chair.
I just come in there. First of all, Councillor Mcclury, it's not hard to say second it and to make it fundamentally clear of what we're doing so that it's right for those who are minuting the meeting, that there's no confusion. And also, it is my understanding that we've had quite a long discussion on the fees that the trust are paying to the council for the use of the facilities. It's my understanding that more or less that the trust wanted, insisted on paying for it, but we'll just let the chief executive clarify it.
Yeah, no, Chair, you're correct. There was significant debate on this previously. Firstly, and I know maybe we have mentioned this before, the council is not in a position to give free of use or reduced rate facilities. The trust has a budget specifically, and indeed I am aware that our higher rates are lower than many other facilities. So certainly the resource availability by way of the budgeting required has never been highlighted as an issue. It is entirely appropriate and indeed an audit requirement of us to recoup the costs, and that's what we are doing. In terms of the, as I've already said, Chair, around the dates that have been chosen, certainly we can go back and clarify from the trust, but my understanding is it's actually around the manpower to staff the centres, as opposed to any other reason why they have opted for a split programme across a number of sites, and that's not unique in the Western Trust. It's happened across a number of other parts of Northern Ireland as well.
Councillor O'Coffey, can you just clarify your proposal, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it's imperative that we use this opportunity to demand that the Western Trust commit to the sustaining of access in Enniskillen and Omagh, given the nature of the Omicron variant and the activities around the world to try and close it down quickly and get vaccines into arms as quickly as possible. So I would like to propose that we make every possible representation to the trust that that they reconsider an approach which was perhaps designed prior to the Omicron variant development. And I think in light of the threat posed, particularly at Christmas and the festive season, with many people coming back home, I think we need to get the facility in Enniskillen kept open. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Okay, you've heard the, I'm not going to take any more speakers on this. You've heard, until I get the proposals cleared up, you've heard it proposed and seconded that the recommendations laid out are accepted. Everybody happy with that? And secondly, you've heard Councillor O'Coffey's proposal seconded that we write to the trust with reference to with the continuity of the vaccination rollout. Everybody happy with that? Okay, we're going to move on. Councillor Coyle, we'll let you in, but those two have been.
Yeah, just briefly. No, I support that, but obviously the situation is that the vaccinators in the vaccination centres have worked tirelessly over this last number of months, and I want to get as many people vaccinated, but it is putting the people in the vaccination centres under extreme pressure. It's coming up to Christmas, where you're supposed to spend time with your family, and have a relaxing time. But they have been under extreme pressure for months and months and months, and we have to be to give gratitude to them for what they have done, because they've worked tirelessly. But it has to be done in a safe, a safe environment, and that they are cherished for what they're doing. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Baird, last speaker in this.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, I wanted a bit of clarification before the vote. I look at 2.5, which states GPs and pharmacists also will continue to provide vaccinations on an appointment basis. Did that mean that there wasn't a gap then between the 15th and 29th, that there was an alternate service that could be called upon?
My understanding of the GPs and the pharmacists is, having spoke to a couple of pharmacists about this in the last week, is that they are rolling out the vaccination, the booster, by appointment, because of the nature of the vaccinations and how they need to be stored. They need to they have to be kept within they have to be used within 28 days from them getting them. But I know, certainly speaking to another pharmacist in my own locality in Ernest this week, the uptake was so good with them that they actually had run out and were waiting and are having their next batch of vaccines is coming in on Friday again to roll it out again. So, Councillor O'Coffey, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think while obviously there are a variety of mechanisms and means by which you can obtain a vaccine, there's nothing to beat the mass centres that we are currently operating. These are walk-in centres. The idea is really to provide ease of access. And there is, as everyone knows, distance decay, which is a major problem in medicine, where the likelihood of someone seeking medical attention will reduce as the distance to the provision of it increases. So it is vital that we provide mass walk-in facilities, and I think that's what this council's done. I thank the councillors for support. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair, just to add on to that, reading again, there's mobile vaccination clinics. It's all right spending people's money. It'll be interested to see over the period, with hindsight, when we come to our next meeting, how many people will have availed themselves of this system and the cost that it is. And I would ask that that figure be produced at the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Baird. That's that item dealt with. We will now move on to section 6, which is the Regeneration and Planning Director reports. And item 6.1 is to consider update on the business case report, paper F. Kim.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So paper F's been circulated and deals with 2 addendums to business cases which were previously assessed, and both addendums are seeking approval for increased financial contributions. First is for the Urban Recovery Project, which is related to the towns of Omagh and Endoskeleton in respect of the COVID-19 recovery. This relates to the Urban Grant Scheme, the brand development and the gateway signage. There are increased costs associated with the project, specifically in terms of the gateway features, including the cost of materials and additional ground surveys. So an additional contribution of £67,680.77 is required from Council. The second addendum then relates to the Endoskeleton Revitalization Project, and this is extending the works, the town centre works, which relates to an additional cost of £26,549. The work from the public realm is being extended down in front of Maud's across from the Ironside, and to balance that out, we're proposing to also do the adjoining side of that road outside Toy Town. There's an error in the report. I think it's Toy Town, not Toymaster, Chair. So seeking approval for the addendums to the business cases.
Okay, first up is Councillor Michael Duff.
Okay, Chair. I'm willing to propose the adoption of the recommendation, subject to answers to maybe a couple of questions. It's really about active travel. Does DFA roads play a part in this type of project, as well as DFC and the council? Because they have a very strong active travel agenda, you know, DFA roads. And secondly, was there any attempt to squeeze even more money from DFC in these projects? You know, obviously there's a shortfall and there's a reality to be faced about project costs on the rise, both in terms of materials and other preparatory work that has had to be undertaken. But I suppose my questions relate to, could more have been got out of DFC and DFA roads, active travel agenda? You know, how come they're not written into any of this? Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, just to note, yes, the original funding package did include some DFI funding, so there was a contribution towards this work, and particularly we did include some cycle provision as part of the projects and cycle parking as well. The additional funding in terms of the additional costs. We did receive an additional 20,000 from DFC to offset the costs in respect of the Endoskeleton project, and an additional 2,000 in respect of the urban recovery gateways project. So some additional funding.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I mean, I suppose just some of the increases in costs, I mean, well, we have to take note of that. I think some of it could have been expected, not least in terms of the increase of material costs. But nonetheless, I mean, these are two significant projects, but both for Oma and Enniskillen, that'll have a material and positive impact on rejuvenating the image of the town. So I'm more than happy to second the recommendations.
Thank you for that. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to second it, but obviously Councillor Donnelly's got in there before me. But no, certainly I'm happy to support the recommendation as pointed out, and take on board the comments from Kim on that matter as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Josephine Deehan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you also to Kim for her report. And I too want to welcome this report and support the recommendation. I think it's proper that we should invest heavily to improve the appearance and the living amenity within our two major towns. So I welcome that. I also want to support Councillor McElduff's comments regarding active travel, Chair. I think not only does this bring considerable health benefits, but it also encourages people to participate in active travel, and therefore will contribute to reducing our carbon emissions from vehicles, and it will help the council to address its climate change agenda. So I want to support Councillor McElduff in those comments, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I suppose the report's in two parts. So the Enniskillen revitalisation project, it notes that the cost increased from estimated cost of 241,000 to 287,000, 287,500, going up 46,000, and that there was additional funding, an extra 20,000 received from DFC, meaning the council has to pay an extra almost 27,000 on top of that. It has to do, I take it from the report, it has to do with the walkway and the active travel and that. The first point where it's jumped from an estimate of 250,000 to almost 320,000, an increase of almost £70,000, and we're getting less match funding for that. There's an outstanding fee of almost £70,000 there still at the council's feet. Is that solely to do with the rebranding of the towns and that, well, as I said at the time, less than inspiring or less than impressive old for Oma, and I think it was Councillor O'Coffey maybe commented on the use of the rust-coloured signs as well. Is that to do solely with the signage, or are there other aspects or elements of that? Because to me it sounds quite extortionate, and I think if that's what it is, I couldn't be supportive of it.
Additional costs, Chair, in respect of the first part are in relation to the gateway feature signage, and included within that cost are 4 gateway signage at 4 locations in Enniskillen, 6 locations in Oma, plus the inner gateway public art signage installation at East Bridge Street in Enniskillen. That includes ground surveys and structural costs, including additional ground survey works that were required because of the location of the signs adjacent to busy roadways, and structural survey works that were required in relation to their location. Included within that cost, because the business case was developed back, I think it was last December, and since then we've become more aware of the increasing volatility of the market and supply chains. So included in that cost is now a 15% optimism bias to take account of those market conditions. So that is where the additional costs have emerged from.
Thanks very much for that clarification. I think, yeah, that everybody in the room and listening in as well aware of the additional costs that were being met with right across the board. But I have to say I wasn't supportive of it at the time, so I would have to register my dissent on this one and oppose it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, well, the recommendations have been proposed and seconded. Everyone happy with that, with the exception of Councillor McAleer? Councillor Irvine?
I declared an interest, Chair, in one of the items, so I cannot vote. I will be noted as not voting.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Keenan, are you coming into dissent as well?
Yeah, coming into dissent. I think it's I don't think it's good value for money for a start, yeah.
Okay, so we have two people dissenting from the proposal and Councillor Irvine can't vote. So that item has now been passed. We will now move on to item 6.2, and that is paper G, which is the COVID recovery small settlement regeneration programme report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report has been circulated, and at the time it was issued, I did note that some of the appendices were draft guidance and draft information. And since the report was issued, we have received correspondence on final guidance from the departments, which is tabled at 9.3, item 3 in your papers tonight. So the purpose of the report is to advise members of a proposed COVID recovery small settlements regeneration programme. This is jointly developed and progressed by DFC, Dira and DFI. And the final guidance is attached now with the correspondence. The primary objective, and just to note that funding has now been confirmed in the sums that were outlined in the initial reports. There's been no change to the funding allocations. Primary objective of the Small Settlements Programme is to create vital and viable towns to meet the needs of local citizens and surrounding areas. The guidance notes that the programme is primarily aimed at settlements with populations between 1,000 and 4,999, but there is no firm rule within the guidance that precludes projects and settlements below the 1,000 threshold. Councils have been asked to develop investment plans at risk and now to submit those investment plans to DFC by the 21st of December, which is Tuesday coming. The draft plan should set out the Council's proposed projects and confirm that the Council will provide a 10% contribution, which can be either capital or resource. And at paragraph 1.5, I have outlined for you the aims, the three key aims of this settlements programme. So we are, the guidance notes that we in Fermanagh and Omagh will receive a total funding allocation of £1,795,743, and the breakdown is there in terms of the three departments. This is from a total fund of 19.5 million, with some of the funding allocated on the basis of the settlement bands F and G, which relate to those population settlement categories which I recently outlined. DFI spend should be directed towards projects or elements of projects that contribute to DFI policy interests, so the active travel and promoting connectivity, elements of projects, and or to create and enhance green or blue spaces. And crucially, programme spend must be able to commence by March 2022, with delivery of all identified project outcomes by March 2023, which is a significant constraint in terms of programme delivery. So we welcome that the proposed programme is an opportunity to invest in the regeneration of smaller settlements, following on from the investments which have been made in the two larger towns. So while a number of towns within the district do fall within the identified population threshold, there are a significant number of smaller settlements across our district, which again have suffered from the impacts of COVID-19. And our approach in terms of the investment plan which we would like to submit is to take a more inclusive approach than that which has been outlined in respect of the 1,000 to 4,999 category. and to reflect the district's settlement pattern of smaller towns and villages. And on that basis, we are proposing that we would pick up on the previous engagement and the reserve list of projects which came through the Village Renewal Programme and which have been consulted upon, developed in partnership with stakeholders, agreed through the LAG, and which the Council previously supported in terms of the report which was presented to Council earlier in the year. So the starting position would be that outstanding list of projects arising from the Village Renewal Programme, and Appendix 2 does set out that existing list of projects. Crucially, those projects are also at a fairly advanced state of readiness, in that stakeholders were asked to confirm that those projects were well advanced, with ownership issues addressed and statutory approvals largely in place. So in terms of the list of projects set out at Appendix 2, that represents the projects arising from the Village Renewal Programme. That includes at the moment four schemes, which we noted from the initial guidance may not be supported through the programme, but we had intended to submit on the basis that they may contribute to the vitality of adjoining towns and villages. Since then, the final guidance has been issued, and the final guidance includes an additional statement which states that projects outside towns and villages will not be eligible for DFC or Dira funding under this programme. So on that basis, 3 of the projects which are included on Appendix 2 would not be eligible, and those projects would be the scheme at Canolly, which is 1.2 miles outside of the settlement limit, the scheme at Brookborough, which is 0.6 miles outside of the settlement limit, the scheme at Greencastle, which is 0.8 miles outside of the settlement limit. There's also a scheme at Derry Lynn, which is 0.2 miles out of the settlement limit. However, there is a pedestrian footpath linking the village to that facility, and part of the proposal is for resurfacing and works to a path, and there may be an opportunity to avail of DFI funding in respect of that project in terms of the connectivity element. So the proposal is that the revised list would not include those schemes which we had previously identified. It's proposed that the maximum grant available to an individual project then on that list would be set at 200,000, and that officers then proceed to engage with all project leads to seek final confirmation of project scope and deliverability within the programme timeframes. In addition, and in recognition of the increasing vacancy levels within towns and villages across the district, we further suggest that the Council's plan include provision for an empty to occupied grant scheme, and this would be open to all settlements but below the 499 limit. It would be a capital grant scheme provided to vacant commercial property owners to encourage investment in those buildings to attract tenants and to reduce long-term vacancy, and thereby improving the vitalisation of those settlements. That would tackle some of the long-term vacancy issues that we have, impact positively on streetscapes, provide high specification buildings. It could also widen the diversity of uses, create buildings that are fit for purpose and ready to occupy, and bring redundant or disused floor space back into use. We would suggest that the extent of funding would be to a maximum of £40,000 at a rate of 80%, with the property owners contributing 20%. And in terms of eligibility, there would be a minimum total capital spend of £25,000 per project. The extent of grant available will be dependent on funding availability, with underspend from the Village Renewal projects being directed towards this fund. However, if we in terms of removing the schemes that I've just referenced, there would be available funding. There are also a number of sites within towns and villages suffering from considerable dereliction, and in the short to medium term, the potential for investment would seem unlikely, and these sites can dramatically adversely affect the ambience and amenity of localities. And so we're suggesting a provision of a limited fund suggested at £20,000 to provide some screening or other frontage improvements at those sites. While recognising that that's not a permanent or long-term solution, it would positively impact on the streetscape within the towns and villages in the short to medium term. And in the event, or in regard to the schemes which we're removing from the proposed to remove from the village list, we would suggest that that funding is now directed towards a village enhancement fund, and we would have an open call for projects from villages not included in that village renewal list for streetscape and village enhancement projects which could be delivered within the time frames of this programme, and we would bring back to members the criteria for that scheme and the specific criteria for the vacant to occupied scheme prior to opening those schemes as well. So that outlines the thrust of the report, and the recommendations are that we note the proposed COVID recovery small settlements regeneration programme. We support the preparation of the small settlements regeneration plan for submission by next Tuesday, inclusive of the list of village projects as outlined at Appendix 2, with exception of the ineligible projects, and that funding is used to open a call for a town or village enhancement schemes which can be delivered within the project timeframes. We commit to a 10% council capital contribution in respect of the overall programme. We support the development of an empty to occupied scheme and a report in the detail of eligibility is presented to a future meeting. Support the inclusion of a fund for screening or frontage improvements at derelict sites up to a maximum of £20,000, and we make representation to the departments in respect of the funding methodology applied, requesting that this is reviewed to take account of the rural population based in settlements below 1,000 to improve the overall allocation to our district. Chair.
Okay, there's quite a bit on that. There's quite a few speakers here, and the first up is Councillor Bernice Swift.
And thank you very much, Kim, for your in-depth report and the explanations associated with all the appendices, all of which is clear and understood. And Cahirlock, I want to speak to point 6 of the recommendation, and it's speaking up for the smaller settlements. And I can and will propose the recommendation going forward, but I do want to speak up loudly and clearly here tonight for Belnalek to Arnie Greenway. And the Chief Executive has gratefully responded to communication that I forwarded earlier to provide an open call which would allow other projects in smaller settlements such as Arnie and Belnalek. They have an extensive community working in that area of the Erne West DEA, and it's just unfortunate that they didn't know about the whole recovery small settlement scheme until earlier, and then again eligibility prevents them from completely being able to make their application. But they would like to have a meeting with officers because they are seeking support of a phase 1 of their Greenway cycle and footpath between Belnalek and Arnie, which is listed in projects going forward. So I would obviously like them to be included, and despite them being smaller than suggested, and I'm all for the little people, the settlement size in the briefing paper doesn't obviously suit a lot of where we are from. But again, there's a very active community base out there, and they have evidenced so much great work all over the years, and indeed had a great launch today at the Cleanish Millennium Hall, and they've developed a wide range of community and sports activities, and obviously they are seeking now to go forward and be included in calls, and I wouldn't be content, and I'm seeking the assurance and support of that here tonight. They've had many meetings all over the years with DFI Roads to discuss all of the active travel to work schemes, etc. But again, fall short because of criteria. They do have a concept phase, a shovel-ready proposal, and they estimate one of their budgets at just a mere 25,000. So it's not too much to ask for a community who has endeavoured to keep alive and thrive well during this terrible pandemic. So I'm seeking that support. If I can have that assurance, I'm glad then to propose the recommendations going forward, but specifically with a strong focus on point 6 of the recommendation. Gurmagat.
Thank you, Councillor Swift. I'll bring Kim in there to answer that first of all.
Thank you, Councillor Swift. Yes, just to confirm that we will be having an open call then for applications, and so there will be an opportunity for all groups with developed proposals, if they're convinced that they can be delivered within the project timeframes, then to submit applications.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. Similarly to Bernice, I was coming in on the Greenway cycle / footpath between Ballinack and Arney to see about its potential inclusion. I'm very reassured by what Kim said there, that there will be an open call, that great communities like the community in that area will be able to apply to be a part of this. It's an area with a growing population. You just have to look at Mullymasker and the nursery there, its enrollment's increasing. Obviously, the local football club and community hall have had a surge in numbers of users, and they provide vital services to both Arney and Ballinack. And of course, Culca the Cleanish and so much other shows the demonstrates the commitment of the community to improving their area. You have a really strong community group and strong community focus that are very keen to work with the council and have demonstrated that they can do big projects. And as Bernice said, their estimate for their phase 1 of their project is in the region of 25,000, which compared to many of the projects on this list is a small amount. And of course, this meets all the benefits set out in 1.5 of the paper there, and would be eligible under the DFI funding section. So given what we've been told about the open call and that they will be able to apply to be included in this, and hopefully council officers can contact them about this as well, I am happy to second the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Next up, we have Councillor Bert Wilson. Patience, Bert.
Chair, yes. No, I had intended welcoming this document, but when I've heard the alterations that's made to it, I'm really disappointed in the fact that once again the rural areas are being knocked back, and I'm quite sure that some of them would have been delighted to get this funding to assist them. It's really unfair, I think, that just because you live outside a village that you shouldn't be treated similar to or have the different treatment than the ones inside that area. But there's really, I was going to propose that we revisit the project, but obviously listening to Kim, the decision has been made and that's not really possible. So I suppose all I can do is welcome what's coming and hope that some more of it comes to Mid-Tyrone and some of the areas that have been neglected, and maybe we'll get that, hopefully, some money to that area. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, and next up, Podderding.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I've had difficulty unmuting. Thank you, and thank you, Kim, for the update. I'm very reassured that there will be an open call. I'm aware of groups who have missed out and have shovel-ready projects with the very short time frame that we have been assigned. I am delighted to see a variety of projects, but I know many other community groups who are looking forward to availing of this, so the open call would be brilliant. Very disappointed that rural areas such as Greencastle, Connolly, Brookborough will be ineligible. The fact that Mid Tyrone in the appendix will only get one is quite concerning. It is very much a rural village funding scheme, and they're being left out. I'm looking to know when will the open call be, and how will community groups know about that?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. We will start working on the details of that immediately, and as soon as we receive confirmation from DFI that they've accepted the investment plan, which we will submit next Tuesday, and we will work towards opening a call as soon as practically possible, because obviously in terms of the spend deadlines, we need to get moving on this very quickly. We will also work out a communications plan, but members and all of our community organisations will be informed that the call is opened.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kim, for bringing this report. We had a briefing earlier this week or last week on this, so some of us have been informed, and I do welcome this. I mean, I think our rural small villages and towns have really suffered, particularly during the last period. Kim, I wanted to ask a couple of things. I do note in the letter and addendum that came today, they quote on page 3 to 4, demonstrating value for money could be facilitated if neighbouring settlements under 1,000 were grouped collectively to maximise the impact of interventions. Is that where the Village Enhancement Fund comes in? And is that why that has been created as a fund which will group together those smaller villages? That's one question. Secondly, will there be further demands on HR resources, given there is a new Village Enhancement Fund to be created to carry this work forward? Also, where the 10% requirement from Council is given, now it's been indicated that may be asked for flexibility to give more than 10%. Has this been budgeted for in estimates? That's just another question. And should any schemes fall out, through the process, is there an opportunity for redress or to pull back that funding into existing projects where there may be a shortfall? So there's just a couple of questions there for you, Kim, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think in terms of preparing the investment plan, which we will submit by next Tuesday, we will group together a number of these projects in respect of settlements below 1,000. So both in terms of the list on Appendix 2 and in terms of the fund which we will open. The investment plan which we submit will be reviewed and considered by senior officials within the 3 departments, so they need to be convinced of the value for money arguments. We will group as many of those together as possible to try and support that argument. In terms of HR resources, there is a resource budget allocated with this as well. We do already have a capital programme which is significant, and our own capital team are stretched to deliver that. So we will be using that resource budget to try and procure some support to help us deliver this programme, and using the resource budget effectively in that regard. We will include the 10% capital requirement in our estimates now in terms of the estimates consideration, and in terms of underspends. I think that as we receive the open call for applications and also the empty to occupied scheme call, we will be able to develop a reserve list of projects as well, so that if there is any underspend, we should be able to redirect funding to a reserve list to ensure that we maximise spend as far as possible.
Thank you for that. Next up, we have Councillor Thomas Rayleigh.
Thank you, Chair. And I come to this on the approach. First of all, thank him for the detail on the report. I come with the question about Newton Butler club and their ineligibility that I found out today. And it seems to fall on the basis that they were successful in round 2 of the previous set of calls, and that you are continuing to use the round 2 list of projects that were put forward to seek the money this time, given the tight timescales, and that's very understandable, and I have no problem with that. I'm disappointed, obviously, that the departments have excluded those 4 rural projects here. But what I wish to highlight, Chair, and I think it's something that is in the spirit of inclusiveness missed here. Newton Butler had put in a call the same as many other groups and got 200,000 to fund theirs, but that 200,000 did not fund at all, and so there was a shortfall and they had to reduce and trim back their project. Now, that is the same as any other group that is in round 2 now. They should be eligible, in my view here, to be able to put forward their shortfall, the same as any other group. Not forgetting that this group has went through all of the statutory processes and permissions and is shovel ready, and spend timeframes are tight. So we are looking here that our group is eligible on the same basis as all of the other call 2 applications. And I'm not asking for a new project or anything else. I'm just asking for the shortfall on that call 2 project to be included as eligible now on this new program, the same as any of those other groups in call 2, because some of them groups were successful in call 1 and will be able to draw down further funding, be it on a different program. But just like Newton Butler was successful on it, they have a shortfall on that project and it has not been finished. You look at the path that they are doing, and that was supposed to be 1,200 meters, cut down to 800 meters now, because of the shortfall on that extra money that was got for call 2. So I'm proposing, Chair, that Newton Butler First Fermanagh Club is included in this application to be able to enter their shortfall of the call 2 project, the same as any of the other call 2 project groupings. Thank you.
Okay, Kim.
I'm not aware of the specific details in respect of the shortfall, respect of the application. Members, I suppose that went through the Village Renewal Programme, was funded through Village Renewal Programme, which is Dira, and this is a separate small settlements programme.
Chair, I was told by the officer today that it was Newton was taken out of it because they were successful in the previous application, even though that I pointed out this was a completely separate. And while I understand that call 2 is the list that you're working off and there's no new applications being made, I understand that completely. And Newton Butler's falls into that category where there's no new application. It is the shortfall in that call 2 application that couldn't be funded under the previous round. So they are as equal as anybody else in that call 2 to look for their shortfall to be at least in the list.
Chair, I couldn't comment specifically on the details. I suppose I would expect that there have been more than Newton Butler, there'd be more than one scheme which would have suffered from a shortfall in funding and may have had to review the scope of their project as a result.
There was only, sorry, Kim, there was only the Newton Butler was the only group out of call 2 that got funded. So there was no other group out of the call 2 got funded. That was the extra money. So there was call 1 for the village renewal. 17 groups got funded. There was a shortfall. So there was another call put out. And Newton Butler was the only group that got funded out of that second call. So their shortfall is the only one. There is no other group in call 2.
It was the reserve project, as far as I know, that was funded from the underspends, and we were able to progress it. But there would have been other projects funded prior to that, and I suppose I just need to look at the detail in respect of reopening those considerations and how it would impact across the other projects. And as I say, I don't have the detail of all of that in front of me, member.
Well, Chair, just to conclude, I was told by the officer today that the call 1 projects that 17 got funded, that was one call. The second call for the reserve was a completely separate set of projects, and Newton was the only one that got part funded out of that second call, and we are now using that second call list to be able to put forward our case this time. And I'm putting forward the case that Newton's shortfall, because they were the only one that got funded out of call 2, should be eligible. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that proposal of Councillor O'Reilly's? We'll pick it up as we go along. Next up is Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd be happy enough to second Councillor O'Reilly on that. I just want to talk as well about 2.7. It talks about the derelict buildings and the screening of them, or possibly improving the front of them. Just back to Newton Butler, this was done during the G8 summit. And in my view, it sort of looked crude and tacky, the job that was done then. And I was thinking maybe a better approach could be to tie in with the housing executive maybe, and to use that 20,000 and maybe local charities and the community groups to try and use the opportunity to address the homeless problem that we're currently having. I'd like to suggest Newton Butler for that enhancement scheme if Tomas hasn't already, or maybe include that in Tomas's proposal. Because there's a large number of empty buildings along the street. There's an old bank, an old hotel, there's a number of houses, and to just give them a facelift, I think it's a waste when we have such a housing need. If it's possible for us to tie in with the housing executive on that, to address that, I'd like to add that in. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, that seems to be a separate proposal, but I'll let the Chair rule on that one. But I would suggest that that's something that we need to take some consideration of in terms of the dereliction issues, and look at a potential list and bring a list for approval back to Council, as opposed to making arbitrary decisions without further information.
I'd be happy enough to propose that as a separate one, and second Tomas.
It's okay. Thank you, Councillor Keenan. Next up, we have Councillor Anthony Feely.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'll be brief. I was going to come in on Aaron West there, but seeing now that Eamon has second Thomas's proposal, I was going to do that, but I'll second Eamon's proposal now about the dereliction. No, and I thank him for this here, and I'm glad to see a few places in Aaron West down here which will be greatly needed. And I was just coming in similar to Councillor Swift and Councillor Gannon there on the arm, and I agree with that bit of funding. I'm glad that Kima says there is going to be an open call now for I know I was being lobbied on that this last year or so as well. So I was just wondering when is the open call going to start? That's all I was kind of wondering. And I'm glad that we're not being strict on the 1,000 people in the area. I'm glad that we're being given a wee bit of leeway there, because there's a lot of places there isn't even 1,000 people. So I'm just glad about that. But I was just wondering when is the open call starting? Thank you.
Kim has dealt with the open call already. She's going to basically put her head down from tomorrow on and look at that. So hopefully we can get some information out on that fairly quickly. And communication plan, Councillor Rayleigh, you're called a different name there. Councillor Chris McCaffrey.
Gormagat Kyerly, thank you, Chair. Thank you to Kim for providing the details on the report. Just I suppose to start off, I am disappointed. Two of the projects which have been deemed ineligible are directly in my locality, both Derrylin and Cannolly. I'm familiar with both of those projects, and I think I would greatly refute the Derrylin one being 0.2 mile outside of the 30 mile an hour speed limit, because the plan there is to actually provide a track which would be able to bring people from Derrylin O'Connell's football pitch into the village. And I'm familiar with the land and the proposed pathway for that track. So, I mean, I understand that there are other plans in place to provide those projects being part of maybe the council's own investment plan, and the upcoming open call, which will be greatly welcomed as well. But I mean,
I could just clarify, Chair, before the member proceeds with that one that we are proposing that we would still include Derrylin. We've recognised that it is just outside the settlement limits, but because the proposal is for a pathway and there is already a pedestrian path linking out there, we will include it and aim for DFI funding as part of the overall package, and progress this one as an active travel. It will be subject to the departmental approval, but we are going to try for inclusion of that scheme.
Thanks for that clarification. Apologies if I missed that detail, but no, well, look, in that case, then I'm obviously very happy, so I can retract the previous comments around that, because that is a fantastic project. I can hardly think of a better project for the area, but I know there are other works planned. So, and again, with the Cannolly project there, unfortunately, just due to the locality of where football grounds are, I know it's a bit out of the village, so we will see what we can come up with in the future there. But yeah, look, and I also would like to just support the my Iron West colleagues on the Benelect Arnie project. Again, I've met with that group and have been down at the site, and I've seen again what they're planning to do, and I would be greatly in support of that. So in that case, I'm happy then to just support what has been said, and it's great that the Derrylin project is going ahead. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Councillor Donald O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. First of all, I think it's very positive to see many of these projects actually come forward. Projects which have been around for at least maybe 15 years. Some of them were identified in the village enhancement projects quite a long time ago. And I think actually the one thing I would say is that was a very grassroots participative consultation and engagement exercise. And I think that it stands to the strength that these still are what came through that process are actually the projects which continue to define the priorities for villages. That said, however, I think that the approach taken by the various Stormont departments is scandalous. The idea that a rural village improvement program should stop at the end of a 30-mile speed limit is outlandish. The idea that a settlement has to have 1,000 residents in order to fulfill criterion for rurality is self-evidently ludicrous. And I think this needs to be challenged. So I would like to propose that we write to the ministers on this to highlight our concerns in regard to both those issues. There's even worse issue, though, in regard to the Department for Communities. I note that Dira has allocated money to our council area on the basis of the total rural population in our council area. That results to an 11.9% divvying up to this council area of this funding. The equivalent funding by Department for Infrastructure was allocated on the basis of transport considerations. it results in an 8.7% allocation to our council area. But unfortunately, the Department for Communities only counts populations when they're over 1,000 in terms of settlement size. And the result of that is a mere 6.9% of the total fund. So the Department for Communities is really effectively excluded rural residents in this council area from equality. And I would like to include that in communication to, in particular, the Department for Communities to highlight the implications of the way that they have allocated this funding. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor O'Coffey, I'll take in John, Councillor. Well, sorry, I'll let the Chief Executive in here first of all.
Yeah, Chair, no, it's just really on a point of accuracy. I suppose the representations could certainly be made in terms of members' concerns, but the progression down to, or the reduction down to 1,000 is actually a significant change in DFC. Their normal eligible criterion is from 5,000 and above. So I think the issue that probably, which would be consistent with previous council representations, is on the policy gap at central government level on dealing with rural regeneration. So DFC don't have the responsibility to deal with rural, and Dira don't have the responsibility to deal with regeneration. So just on that context, Chair.
Okay, next up is Councillor John Mcclury. And just before I go on to Councillor Mcclury, I need a seconder for the overall report that has been proposed by Councillor Swift. So maybe Councillor Mcclury will do the honours.
Yeah, Chair, thank you very much. I would like to second it. It's rather unfortunate that some of the projects have to be excluded, but we're seeing 10 projects that have been sitting there in abeyance, waiting funding, and they're going to be used. You know, we're going to get those progressed now, which it has to be welcomed. Particularly being an Aaron North councillor, to see 3 projects that are going to be completed, the Blake, and then where I live here, I'm sort of halfway between Adderley and Cash, so both those villages are going to benefit. The footbridge in Cash has been a long source of problems in the village, and the completion of the footpaths around Adderley will be a massive progress for the village. So this project, whilst every project has constraints, we've got to take the positives out of it, and there are communities that are going to benefit. But that's also going to leave it that if any other funding becomes available, those that have missed out this time should be in a better position to be able to progress their projects on the next round of whatever way we can get some money out there. So I'm quite happy to second this at this stage.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Alex Baird.
Thank you very much, Chair. And it's obvious that the Arnie Community Hub did a good job on lobbying the councillors for the area. I had quite a conversation with Laurie McCusker this afternoon, and following that, had a discussion with Kim as well. Certainly support what they want to get done. Realise the greenway aspect might be difficult in the route that it is because there's no former railway line there, but there's certainly potential for the cycle footpath between Ballinalek and Arnie, especially when you take into account the large moga and the investment that the council put into it. So I would be supporting that aspect as well. Thank you.
Back to the chamber to Councillor Maguire.
I'm going to Caherly, and just to inform the members that I did raise the issue of the policy gap as indicated by the Chief Executive at the Partnership Panel meeting through NILGA, in which we had a direct meeting with the ministers. I outlined the position of the gap that funding from DFC stopped at 5,000 and that Dira had a gap in their regeneration budget. So I have to say I was somewhat satisfied when I seen this funding at least responded in some way to that. But again, like all members, I'm fully aware that across our district. We have many settlements with less than 1,000, and that was fully discussed at the working group the other day. So, as I say, whereas I felt rather chuffed at the start of the meeting, by the time all the local councillors from the rural areas had their say, I thought to myself, I thought I'd done a good job, but it's obviously not a complete job yet. So at this stage, I would just make members aware that through the partnership panel, I am quite happy to raise again the issue of flexibility for our rural area, given, and I will of course get the detail from our officers with regard to the numbers of settlements, the size of settlements and that, and I will be proposing such a question at the partnership panel going forward, and hopefully I can get it on the agenda then. Margaret, Carly.
Thank you for that. I want to wind this one up. So there's 2 speakers left, and the first one is Councillor Mary Gardy.
Thank you, Chair. Extremely brief, just really a point of accuracy. It is my understanding that Councillor Gannon seconded the overall report in his submission just earlier, but I think Councillor Mcclury did, but just for accuracy for the officers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McElduff.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I want to commend Councillor Tommy Maguire for doing what he said he did, and I know he did at the partnership panel. He's done it more than once there. That's a vital platform for that type of message to be stated, communicated and heard. You know, you have ministers listening, and that's the purpose of that. Local government speaking to the executive, you could say, in a joint way. I think this council gets it, you know, in fairness to ourselves as a council, and you know, that's members and officers. We get it because what we say in meetings to ourselves is reflected in documents that go forward in our name, you know, and that is evidence of good listening. My impression of the Department for Communities is that it is very, very urban focused in terms of its duties and remits and responsibilities. And I think we need to maybe get that written in black and white. What is DFC remit towards rural communities? In our council area, for example, what way does DFC approach it? Or do they have an understanding or an expectation that Dira, that rural affairs section of Dira, performs a similar function? You know, I just would like it clarified. What is the remit of DFC and Dira with respect to rural regeneration? And does DFC see itself as having no role in the matter? We obviously would like them. Councillor Green often says, is it Department for Communities or is it Department for Urban Communities? You know, that's the question. You know, but do they have an understanding at the centre of that department that they're urban focus and Dira has a rural focus? You know, could they say it to us just like that if that's the way it is? So I would propose a letter to DFC and to Dira seeking clarity on their respective duties towards rural regeneration. And I think we're moving in the right direction as a council because we're standing up for those settlements and centres of population that are well below 1,000. You know, the villages and the hamlets, not everybody uses the word hamlet, but the villages and the hamlets as defined and dispersed rural communities and former area plans, you know, are there for a reason. It reflects the characteristic of our council area. But I think those 2 government departments need to clarify things for us.
Okay, thanks for that. Right, before we go any further, I'm going to take some of these proposals and get them cleared up. The first proposal I had seconded by Councillor Keenan was from Councillor O'Reilly. Do you want to clarify that for me, please, Councillor O'Reilly? Okay, that's okay. The next proposal was
Sorry, Chair, I was trying to unmute. So what's okay is...
Yeah, it's okay. With the officers are happy enough with the clarity of your proposal. Thank you.
Cheers.
The next proposal was from Councillor Keenan, and that was seconded by Councillor Feely.
That was just that we would work with the housing executive regarding vacancy and dereliction with potential for housing supply, and that a report would be brought to a future committee meeting on the options regarding that.
Okay, and then finally we have Councillor Okay, with Councillor O'Coffey's proposal, which hasn't been seconded yet. Have we somebody to second Councillor O'Coffey's proposal? Councillor Feely?
Hello, yeah, I'll second Councillor Coffey's there if he needs it, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Just on my own proposal, Chairman, just that I know Alison said to work with House Executive and the housing needs, but specifically Newtown Butler, and also the inclusion of that enhancement scheme. Well, if that was possible, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think the two aspects, Chair, certainly we can make the provision for Newton Butler, though we can reference that for the housing executive, though I expect they might come back on a wider district basis, but we wouldn't be able to make the provision for that within this current programme because we wouldn't have the engagement complete with the housing executive by next Tuesday, Chair. But certainly we would be able to include that within the potential for partnership working in the report that would come forward to you. But certainly happy, do recognise it was made in the context of Newton Butler.
Thank you for that.
Gurmagana Carney, just for clarification, from what my recollection, what Councillor Coffey had proposed, and then my further statement about adopting the partnership panel process, I think would have the same impact in my analysis, and maybe Councillor Coffey would reflect on that, maybe withdraw his proposal, which was direct to writing to the ministers, whereas, as I did indicate, the process of the partnership panel did seem to facilitate at least getting the figure below 5,000, and I am quite determined to raise the issue again to hopefully have the same positive impact. It's just a thought that we're both doing the same job, or letters and directly through the partnership panel, but again, it's entirely up to Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm content to continue with it. I do respect and value the work that Councillor Maguire is obviously doing on behalf of this council, but I think that there was a wider remit, including the other ministers, and I think it's no harm for this council to put on the record our opposition to mechanisms which are effectively discriminatory against our community. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, I need a seconder for Councillor McElduff's proposal. I see Councillor Feely's hand up. Okay, Anthony.
Yeah, I'll second it. Victor, no bother.
Thank you. And this is the final speaker. Hands down. That's good. Okay, you've heard quite a few proposals there. And seconded. Everybody happy? That we move on. Thank you. Next up is item 6.3, and that is to consider an update report on Gortian Glen Steering Group meeting held on the 9th of December. That's paper H.
Thank you, Chair. This report was to follow. The meeting took place on the 9th of December, but didn't achieve a quorum, so progressed on an informal basis and really provided members with an overview of progress of phase 2 works, which are complete pending the delivery of an electronic entrance gate, which we hope to receive before the end of December, and an update on the progression of phase 3 works at Gortian Glens, which are outlined at paragraph 2.2, as well as an update on the Spare and Sculpture project and its progress as well, and recommend the Council notes the update report on the meeting of the Gortian Glen Steering Group.
Okay, there is no recommendation there as there was no quorum at the meeting. It's just for noting. So, Councillor McAleer.
Chair, I'd declared an interest in this as a member, but I think it's all right. That's one of the people that attended the meeting, just to note it for the purpose of the meeting. So happy to propose the note.
Councillor Michael Duff.
Thank you, Chair. I'm obviously not a member of the steering group, and that's why I like to use this opportunity to raise any issues that I'm concerned about or are brought to my attention by constituents in respect of Gorton Glens. And many people have a strong interest in it and are very, very pleased at the focus that has been applied by the council and others in recent years, and all the good workmanship and workwomanship in respect of everything that has taken place there. Phase 1 and phase 2 over. Moving on then, I think there is an appetite for contacting TransLink, and I would propose this, that we contact TransLink asking, is it possible to have the Sperrin Rambler bus service on Saturdays? That obviously would assist people who don't drive or own a car, and would facilitate people at weekends who want weekend or Saturday access to Gorton Glens Forest Park. And then secondly, the bus shelter to the cafe building, the path there is being upgraded. Can this be made inclusive for all, the pathway, you know, for people with mobility requirements? Can it be approached from that perspective, that it is an inclusive pathway? Thank you.
Okay, do you want to second the noting of the?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I didn't get to the last steering group meeting, but I'm prepared to second Councillor McAdult's part 1 of his proposal with regard to the Sperrin Rambler. Thank you.
Okay. You've heard 2 proposals that we note the meeting that was held by the group, and also Councillor Michael Duff's proposal, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Is everybody happy with that? Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to item 6.4, and that's to consider update report on Community Planning Strategic Partnership Board, paper I.
Chair, so the purpose of this report is to update members on the board meeting held on the 30th of September. Actually, that's incorrect. It was on the 24th of November. Members, partnership is required to publish and submit to the Department for Communities a statement of progress every 2 years, and the last statement was published in November 2019, with the second statement of progress due by the end of November 2021. That was presented to the board meeting in November, and the statement of progress can be viewed at the link provided in the report. The draft minutes are attached of the partnership board meeting are attached to Appendix 1, and all of the papers relating to the meeting are publicly available through the council's website, and the link to all of the council papers there. There were a number of decisions agreed by the partnership, which are outlined in paragraph 2.2 of the report, and the recommendation is that the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of November, it was, Chair, are noted, and that the statement of progress for 2021 is noted.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. While I understand this is for noting, there are 2 issues I just wanted to highlight and maybe seek some clarification on. I note that this meeting occurred at the end of November. On the bottom of page 7 there's a statement that the discussion, or this is around the integrated care systems, and it was stated that the approach was generally considered to be a positive piece of work looking into the future and how it can positively impact the health and social care system for the benefit of local communities. Well, I'm sure everyone here in the offices will know that we as a council took a decisive stand on this issue in defence of NHS values in September, which obviously preceded this meeting. And I'm glad to have had sight of the submission that we provided on the integrated care structures, which are, I think, represent an opening of the NHS to privatisation down the road, if not immediately. And I'm just kind of comparing and contrasting the stated position of this council in that meeting with the discussion that occurred here. So some clarification on that. The second point is on page 6. and I welcome the Oma Place shaping plan which has come forward. I'm rather jealously looking at it that it has arrived, but I'm wondering, being that Endoskeleton and councillors, myself included, perhaps initiated discussion on an Endoskeleton planning process. I know other Endoskeleton councillors have been as steadfast in this as myself. Is there any advancement on that we can report at this time? Thank you, Chair.
Chair. So the discussion around the integrated care system was really just an engagement by the health board and the Department of Health, and those views reflect the views of the members, the wider members who make up the partnership board. That's just a reflection of the discussion and the views made at that meeting. In terms of the Endoskeleton Police Shipping Plan, that document is out to tender for consultancy support, and from memory it closes next week. So we'll be able to report on an outcome after that.
Okay. Can I have a proposer, please? Proposed by Councillor O'Coffey, and a seconder for the recommendations, please. Councillor Gardy, thank you. Okay, move on to 6.5, is to consider the report of the Director of Regeneration and Planning, Paper J.
Chair, so this paper outlines a programme provided by an industry-led social enterprise known as Foresee Your Future, aiming to hold a number of regional events in June 2022. And this is really aimed at 13-year-olds to help them gain insights into future career opportunities and to support careers advice and career inspiration, really. And I suppose it's an alternative and innovative approach to careers guidance for that age group. The organisation did hold a pre-pandemic pilot in 2019, which involved 1,200 young people from 8 schools and took place at the Ulster University in Jordanstown, and that pilot was very successful. And based on that, they now wish to roll the programme out in June 2022. The proposed event is aimed at Year 9 students with no selection criteria, involves activities led by industry representatives, and incorporates a wide range of games and work-based challenges. It's not possible to hold one event for the entirety of Fermanagh and Omagh because of the travel distances involved in getting all the schools to a single location and back within the school day. So given our geographic issues, it's proposed that we would have 2 separate events, one in Omagh in 2022 and then one in Fermanagh in 2023. Omagh Leisure Complex has been identified as a potential venue for an Omagh event, which could facilitate up to 650 students. And the planning, event management, etc. is undertaken by Foresee Your Future. The council contribution includes the provision of a venue, lunch, tea, coffee for volunteers, PA system, and officer support. And the financial cost of supporting this event would be £3,500. So the recommendation is that the council approves delivery of an event for Year 9 students in Omagh Leisure Complex in June 2022, and subject to a positive evaluation of that event would facilitate a similar event in Fermanagh in 2023, with the venue to be identified, and approves the estimated event cost at £3,500 per event for the 2-year period, over the 2-year period.
Okay, thank you for that. First up, Councillor McElduff.
I think this is something to be excited about. It's very positive. And within the neighbourhood renewal meetings, you know, there has been some discussion about poverty of ambition. You know, that that we need to help our community, our young people, to overcome perhaps long-standing poverty of ambition. And this talks about future career opportunities, and presume it's going to look widely at that and creatively at that. And you know, the creative industries, for example, software programming, engineering. I think all of these are important, but even beyond those sectors, we shouldn't limit anybody's thinking or expectation. And just was looking up that famous Einstein quote about imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. And I think we have all good role models, you know, from our own communities about people achieving and various roles within society. You know, it could be a nursing champion, it could be an actor, it could be an ambassador, it could be the leader of a company. You know, there's loads of good local role models for people. So I think this is an excellent project. And I think the council's going about it the right way, aiming to provide the venue and other support. So it is really, really important to fire the imagination of young people and open up their minds and hearts to possibilities. So I think this would be money very well spent. Happy to propose it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Next up, we have Councillor Anthony Feely.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to second this proposal. I think it's a great initiative here of year 9s, so that would be second year students in school, as I call it. Great to get them focusing on their career and what they want to be. For I often seen at 4th and 5th year, kids still don't know what they want to be, as they say, we used to when you grow up, you know. So I think it's a great initiative, and happy to second it. And hopefully now, when in 2023, we'll have COVID long behind us, and we'll have nobody getting a venue from Manawar. You won't know how to go, so just happy to propose. No, second, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Bale.
Thank you, Chair. I have my hand up to second it, but it seems to have gone down very well, and I've been beat to the punch. I think this is an excellent initiative, to be honest. I want to emphasise what Councillor Feely said, that the fact this is aimed at year 9 students should be very well welcomed. I know from my own memory of school, there was plenty of support for career advice when you finished your GCSEs and when you were doing your A levels, but there was comparatively less advice before you chose your GCSEs, and they're the bedrock of your working life. If when you leave school, your GCSEs is what will get you employment. If you want to go into further education, you need a solid GCSE base. I think providing young people with as much information as possible so they can make the best decisions when choosing their GCSEs can only be positive, and I'm glad that's not a controversial opinion in this chamber. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor McAleer.
And it was all going so well. I have to say I have some reservations about this. Whilst I would generally tend to be supportive of social enterprises, I think an industry-led endeavour for 13-year-olds, I can't see how that is potentially a good thing. I can see certain issues cropping up down the road, because a note under 0.2.5 in paper J there, it says that foresee your future, and again, maybe I'm taking issue as a student of languages that I'm taking the name up wrong, but that they manage all pre-planning, event management and liaison with businesses. Now, there are several fairly controversial businesses across this district, and I don't have to list the names of them. So I could see issues with schools, issues with students further down the line, and indeed issues with council if this is something the council support. I think when you go to, and this is something that I note from my own work in the college here, that it's now under the remit of the Department for the Economy as opposed to the Department for Education. When you start prioritising industry or start prioritising economy over education and over fulfilling the role of education, you're going down the wrong track, in my opinion. The start of this discussion, we heard, that great quote from Councillor Michael Duff. That's something that you don't learn in industry. That's something you learn from living your life and from going out and reading and learning and educating yourself. And I would just be a wee bit worried about the road that this is going down. I imagine I'm going to be in the minority, but I would just have to express some reservations in relation to the potential of that. And I would wonder if there's a possibility when it comes to it, presuming that it's going to be supported by the council tonight, that there, given the stated position of this council, maybe we would have a final say on the businesses that are or not included in the final setup on that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and finally on this, Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alison, for your report. No, I would be supportive of this proposal, but I do have to agree with some of the comments made by Councillor McAleer. I was surprised that the proposal was for children who are so young. And I think, you know, when children go to secondary school and they're in year 9, that I think that the focus should be on providing them with a quality education, an education for life. And then, you know, to try and focus down on selecting a career at that age, I think is a bit young. And I would be more concerned regarding broadening out their education. However, I'm sure that all of that has been factored into this project. And I note that a variety of methods will be chosen to look for aptitudes and skills. And I think that that is a good thing. And in terms of the future of our economy, we have been working as a council with the senior management team of the Southwest College. And one of the key themes is to educate our young people and provide training for them, which will equip them for economic development and technological advances in the future. So that's important. So broadly, I am in support, but I do support Councillor McAleer in some of the reservations that he has. I guess we will keep a watching brief on this. My question, Chair, really is that my understanding was that this council could not provide any of its venues free of charge to any organization, you know, community, voluntary, charitable. So could I have some clarification on that, please? Thank you.
Chair, we will recoup the cost of that. That will be part of the financial allocation provision in terms of the overall cost.
Okay, thank you. Well, you've heard that proposed and seconded. Is everybody happy with that? Are you dissenting, Councillor McAleer? Yes. Councillor McAleer is dissenting. Is everybody else happy with that proposal? Okay, we'll move on. We're now into the reports for information only. As I stated at the start of the meeting, these are just for noting. We're not going to debate them. So we will move first of all to, sorry, I just see Councillor Thornton, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chair, I was going to actually propose noting 7.1.
Okay, well that's okay. I'll take that then. The first report is 7.1 is to consider the update report on the acquisition of the William Scott Archive. That has been proposed by Councillor Thornton, seconded by Councillor Blake. Thank you. We'll move on to item 8, which is the Regeneration and Planning Directorate reports. I'll pass over to Kim to go through these. 8.1 is to note the progress report on the capital programme.
Yes, Chair, and the details being provided in the report, and the recommendation is to note the update provided and outlined, and the update in respect of expenditure for the first half of the year.
Can I have a proposer, please, and seconder for those? Proposed by Councillor Blake, seconded by Councillor Thornton. Thank you. Next, we have to note the report on the proposal of application notices, the PANS, paper M.
And again, the report is as outlined, Chair. There are 3 proposal of application notices, and it's recommended that the Council notes the receipt of the 3 PANs as outlined in the report.
Okay, again, Councillor Thornton's proposed. Councillor Blake has seconded. Councillor McAleer.
Chair, that's well, a point of accuracy in terms of one of the plans in my own area that they've sent out communication to some of the DEA representatives, but they've got some of the information seems to be out of date in terms of the elected representatives, so it might be worth maybe going back to them on some of that. I can
Okay.
forward on if necessary, just to show what I
If
mean.
you pass that on to Kim, yeah, okay. Next up is 8.3, as to note the update report on the independent examination of local development plan 2030, paper N.
Chair, and again, the report is as outlined, and there are a number of appendices attached to the report. It's recommended that the committee notes all correspondence from the PAC, including the officer's response to the initial letter and the update on the LDP team's progress in respective preparations for an independent examination.
Thank you. That's proposed by Councillor Swift. Have a seconder? Councillor Howard Thornton, thank you. Move on to 8.5, is to note the report of the Director of Regeneration and Planning. Sorry, I missed 8.4. The mid-year progress report of the corporate plan 2024.
Thank you, Chair. So again, report for noting. It provided an update on our mid-year report on our corporate plan actions, and an exception report is attached alongside in the document library. We've included all the performance report cards and also an update on the Q2 progress update on our improvement plan. Again, with a detailed document attached, and the recommendation is to note the update report on the corporate business recovery plan actions, on the performance improvement plan Q2 report, and also the receipt of the audit and assessment report for 2020 to 2021.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Kim, for the report. I'm happy to propose to note.
Okay, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Irvine, thank you. Now, 8.5, to note the report of the Director of Regeneration and Planning.
Thank you, Chair. So again, this report just sets out updates on letters of offer and letters of variance, and there are 3 outlined in the paper, and the recommendation is to note the acceptance of letters of addendum and letter of extension.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, are you proposing? Thank you. Okay, seconder, please. Councillor Maguire, thank you. Okay, that's the end of the reports. We're now at 10 o'clock because we had the with approximately 14 minutes at the start of the meeting due to a technical problem. So what I will do, I will go on to 14 minutes past 10, and then we'll re-look how we're getting on to see if we can get the meeting finalised. So balls in your court. Next up is correspondence, item 9.1, and that is to consider correspondence dated the 30th of November 21 from the Department of Infrastructure regarding confirmation of funding for greenways and active travel projects.
Chair, just to highlight 2 specific aspects, I suppose good news in relation to the funding which has been secured in terms of Endoskeleton to Belcoo, and also in terms of the cycle parking and signage, which was the community scheme that the council had submitted. We did also make an application for the education, the schools provision, but the department has advised that they will be rolling those schemes directly out through the Department of Education. So just with that in mind, Chair, we'd be recommending noting of the correspondence.
Okay, Councillor Baird.
Indeed, thank you, Chair. Yes, this is very good news. Well, I suppose half a loaf's better than no bread when it's 50% capital cost on the greenway, but that's moving at last. I've been working for a long while on that, specifically with colleague of mine in Leitrim, Councillor Sean McDermott. It goes back to the old A4N16 working group, which hasn't met. It was interesting. I got an email the other day there from Leitrim in relation to a meeting tomorrow night about the Greenway. I did email the senior engineer in Leitrim back, pointing out that councillors were at a PNR meeting, and I haven't had anything back on that. But that's just some other news. It's moving in that, and I propose to note. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Coffey.
Thanks, Chair. Maybe I might dust off the old bicycle, and I think that this is very positive news for both Endoskeleton and Balcoo, and it's very positive to see the cycle parking and signage. I think that will make a very big contribution to the utilisation of cycling in the more urban centres. So I'm very happy to second. The one question I wanted to ask was whether I see that this is cost towards the development of the cycleway, the greenway from Balcoo to Endoskeleton. So I'm wondering whether the council has included any consideration of proposals, which I think have been around for quite a while, for a cross-border rail connection that might share the route along a certain way, and whether that would be built into the planning, pre-planning. Thank you, Chair.
No, Chair, we haven't made provision around rail, but obviously there will be considerations tomorrow evening in the context of the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review, which is coming forward. I should have also noted in my introductory comments, Chair, our expectation is that further funding specifically to the capital will be secured from the Shared Island unit as well. And I was unaware, Councillor Baird, that there was a clash that we hadn't been notified of that date, but I'll certainly follow up with colleagues in Leitrim as well, and thanks for highlighting that.
Thank you. Do you want to second that, Councillor? Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. And finally, Councillor Anthony Feely.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I was coming into the secondary. I'll just say a few words. Like Alex there, welcome this funding. 50%. I've been working on this year. I must say not as long as Alex, but from the last Monday, I've been working on this along with Park Flatfall and my colleague up in Leitrim, and hopefully I'll go to Endoskeleton to Balcoo, and as Alison said, with the Shared Island Fund, and maybe get up as far as Sligo. And I also got an email, same as Alex there, about the meeting tomorrow night. I emailed them back as well and got no reply as well. So hopefully we can get that meeting fixed for another day. I think it'd be important that us from Manor Councillors to be at it. So I appreciate that from Alison. So I was going to second, but to second, just happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's been proposed and seconded. Everybody happy? We move on. Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 9.2, and that's to consider correspondence dated the 2nd of December from the Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs regarding management of forests.
Thank you, Chair, and this is in response to our correspondence to the Minister. His response does advise of a number of consultations undertaken, particularly in relation to forests in our area, and of upcoming consultations in relation to review of sparing forests and the West Fermanagh Forestry Planning Area.
Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think Councillor Green, who proposed this, I seconded last time, but I think it's a pity he's not here. But my understanding is that the Minister has entirely missed the entire point of the correspondence that was issued. The issue is really that in the Republic of Ireland now, there is a much more onerous approach taken to the assessment of grounds for forestation. The reasons for that is really that we don't want to see forestry creeping into bogland and other forms of moorland and so on, in which carbon capture is actually more effective when it is not forested. And unfortunately, in Northern Ireland, we lag behind that in that regard. We continue to have a regime which allows forestry basically anywhere within Remit. And the response given here is a summary of the consultation process and the process involved, but its impact is nowhere near as stringent as that current in the Republic of Ireland. So I would like to propose that we return to the Minister, highlighting the original comments that were made in the Council, and also the sort of documentation that we see included in an application just literally across the border and highlight that we need to see Northern Ireland catching up on this. In some areas we're ahead, but this one we're definitely behind, and it's time we had a much more long-sighted view towards forestation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Anthony Feely.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a pity Seamus wasn't here tonight because he's very vocal on this. Yeah, it is totally not right here or wrong answer back here at all. So I'll second Councillor Coffey's proposal. Yeah, the forestry of planting the bogland has done more harm to the climate change than all those farmers is doing. So I just want to say that, you know, it's just totally bad reply there. So just that's it. Just second Councillor Coffey's proposal there.
Yeah, Councillor Coffey, in your proposal, would you be happy enough to note the letter and write back? Okay, and Councillor Feely, you're happy enough to second that? Yeah, thumbs up. Councillor McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. No, again, happy enough to support that. I'm wondering just one wee inclusion in that is kind of danced around, but I think it was referred to by Councillor O'Coffey, and maybe not in so many words, but just to see maybe what his plan, what the Minister, what his department plans are in terms of, well, it's not necessarily going out and planting trees in every nook and cranny, but looking at rewilding forests or decaying forests and indeed re-wetting bogland and peatland, that is, as was rightly pointed out, is, you know, the potential to increase carbon storage. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so Councillor O'Coffey is happy to include that in it, and Councillor Feely. Okay, thank you. That's good. We'll move on now to item 9.3. Is there any other correspondence? There is. Quite a few.
The first, Chair, is a response from the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, and this is in relation to the Council's previous representations regarding river pollution, specifically the most recent incident in the Kesh River. And you'll remember that the Council had suggested that the analysis of dead fish would be taken as soon as possible after the pollution incident. So that's really the detail of the response from the Chief Executive, and has welcomed the Council's interest, but advised that the quick analysis of fish is not as easy as may first be envisaged. So again, for information, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. First in is Councillor Mcclury. IT, this machine's telling me it's going to switch off here in 1 minute. Right, now it's not going to switch off.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, not quite the response we wanted. I think they're kind of missing the point. Is that we wanted all aspects of evidence gathering completed as quickly as possible, and the dead fish is just a small part of it. Any evidence missed is an opportunity to gain maybe a prosecution in what was a serious incident. So I'll note the letter, but I mean, I think that as usual they sort of missed the point.
Okay, Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, again, second letter in a row from Dira or NIE that does miss the point. Look, I'm gonna note it. We're kind of wasting our time at the minute, but I think this is something we will be revisited. It's just worth noting again in terms of the accuracy. The final paragraph in their letter, we have invested significant resources that the guy who took the time to write this didn't even take the time to spell check it before he sent it. But it's kind of what we're up against with this particular department. So as soon as an independent EPA in, the better. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor John Coyle.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Yeah, I think, like Councillor Mcclury said there, that they have missed the point. We needed action straight away when it was reported on the day of the incident. Many things were put on the long finger for 24 hours after, and lifting of fish, yes, they said it may not have been a benefit, but it did cause distress to our community in Kesh area, seeing dead fish lying, which they just left for predators for to come and eat. And everything else, but they have missed the point. We needed action so that perpetrators can be brought to justice and the source of the pollution incident to be, so that they get the full rigours of an investigation. Any small piece of evidence could, help, and those fish might have had, some traces of chemical in their system, which would have helped in the investigation. But as the other commenter said, that it's just not good enough. They have missed the point completely, and there's no point probably writing back because we're talking to a brick wall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It is concerning that we seem to have a lack of focus on what chemicals were found and how they come to be in the water in this case, and how fish were left high and dry in terms of the outworkings of all that. So I think we need to see clarity. Why is it that we're seeing such slow movement on this from the NIEA? Yet again, we have a massive fish kill affecting our remaining aquaculture, and it's just not good enough. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, it's been proposed and seconded that we noted. Okay, we'll move on. Next.
Chair, item 932 is notification of the Northern Ireland Planning Conference 2022 to be held on, well, currently at least in the Europa Hotel Belfast on Wednesday, the 2nd of March. Well, those arrangements, I imagine, might change. The delegate rate is £225 plus VAT, which would be a total of £270, Chair. Programme is detailed on the correspondence.
Councillor McAleer.
Given the extortionate price, although there seems an impressive enough lineup of speakers, I'm happy enough just to propose this for noting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maguire.
Just to second that.
Okay, is everybody happy with that? Thank you. Move on.
Chair, the next item was dealt with earlier in the meeting, but just for the formality, this is the correspondence from DFC in relation to the Small Settlements Regeneration Programme. So again, just we have a course of action agreed, but just for noting correspondence, please.
Councillor Maguire.
Victor, yeah, just to propose the note.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Coffey. Thank you.
Next item in other correspondence, Chair, 934 is correspondence from Joanne McBurney, who's the Budget Director, and this is in relation to the outcome of the first allocation of the complementary fund allocations. So from a Mid-South West perspective, Chair, we've been successful under the Industrial Investment Challenge Fund, and they also will be partners in the wider Digital Transformation Fund, but disappointing at this point given the overall profiling of the funds, but our understanding is that those projects which are at a greater stage of readiness have been successful this time around, so certainly we would be optimistic for the second tranche of funding.
Okay,
Again,
thank you. Before taking speakers on this, can I have a proposer that we extend the meeting by half an hour? I think we will get through it. Councillor McAleer. Councillor O'Coffey. Thank you. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It is disappointing. Obviously, this is the main economic development programme that is likely to come into this area for the foreseeable, certainly for the next few years, that only one of these funds of one of our projects has been deemed appropriate to proceed. And I do recognise we obviously have a wider benefit. But my main question, and I had some correspondence with the Director earlier on this, is the Industrial Investment Challenge Fund. The only information which we received on this as a council was received on the 21st of May of this year. And that that information actually was a blank page to be filled in later on. There was 2 summary paragraphs in the overall material submitted for information of councillors around the summary report. But those were actually tangential, and they were mostly focused on the preparatory work ahead of developing this initiative. So I'm really quite concerned that we as a council, the only thing that is going to be funded is a 7.5 million initiative, which we've never seen any, at least as far as I gather, any information on as a council. I would like to know a lot more about this. It looks like we have £7.5 million here, which is going to go to capitalists who own large businesses. And I would be very keen that instead of benefiting the few, that money such as this would actually go to benefit workers, to benefit apprenticeships, to improve employability and paying conditions. And I'm in the absence of any information whatsoever on this, I find myself unable to provide accountability on it. So I'm wondering why, as a council, we have this proceeded and we still have not been provided with the detail of the only thing that has now been funded under the most important economic development programme that there is. And I do note, just in in conclusion, that the last time that this came forward on the 25th of May, I actually had raised, and a number of other councillors had raised, significant concerns around this growth plan, only to find that it had already been launched and pre-printed, and that there was an issue that at that point, which we raised as councillors, around how this whole process is accountable, because a lot of the wording even is quite difficult to stand insofar as workers' pay and conditions are looked on as expenses, and there's a lot of support for automation and redundancies in working class communities. So I'm not at all satisfied that I have enough information on this. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, certainly, I think there's a number of points that we would agree to differ with Councillor O'Coffey on it. It's simply incorrect. A number of the statements that have been made, we've provided the information, the detail around the growth deal, the mechanisms of it. The complementary fund certainly is exactly that. It is to complement the wider growth deal. Our understanding is 50 million is allocated now. The remaining 50 million will be coming in a second tranche. In terms, Kim will speak now on the detail of the Industrial Investment Challenge Fund, but the Mid-South West growth deal is specifically capital interventions. We did bring through the milestones of when the growth deal principles had been agreed, when the regional economic strategy had been agreed. We've also convened a number of informal meetings. We've also provided presentations. I appreciate the councillors opposed to the principle, but that doesn't actually mean that the council has done anything wrong by submitting and working in this way.
Thank you, Chair. This fund has been developed in terms of an application. We now have a funding offer from the complementary fund for £7.5 million. It's based on engagement which was undertaken with a range of businesses from across all of the sectors represented in the Mid-South West region. It's reflective, the offer in terms of the fund will be reflective of our business profile and will be dominated by micro and small businesses. So the fund has been designed to focus on micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. It's not being offered to larger enterprises who already have access to innovation funds. The size of the fund over 2 calls is anticipated to be 15 million. This is the first phase of it, and we will be looking at maximum grant support rates under de minimis aid limits, and it will involve collaboration with colleges, universities or research organisations, and there will be manageable minimum eligible spend thresholds. It's an innovative fund. Or research in terms of the innovation pilot that we've conducted has identified that many of our SMEs and micro businesses have not had the opportunity or have access to the expertise to do extensive business strategy planning work or to consider how innovative approaches can help them to grow their business. And also, I think the point in terms of labour, the issues are that many of our businesses are struggling to access labour, and the labour market does reflect that across all sectors. And access to innovation will allow businesses to address roles that they are finding impossible or hard to fill in terms of automating processes and allowing them then to provide better quality jobs, which people may be more interested in, which is not the case. And I think history has shown us that innovation can certainly remove some of the more monotonous jobs that people perhaps are not interested in doing. So that's the thrust in terms of innovation, but it is very much focused on SMEs.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm not letting you back in again, Councillor O'Coffey. Sorry, Councillor O'Coffey. That's not correct. Both the officers made. Can I have a proposer and second to note that correspondence, please? Councillor Thompson and a seconder. Can I have a seconder noted, please? Councillor Robertson, thank you. One more item on the correspondence.
Yeah, Chair, this is from the Workspace Group, received earlier today, and this is expressing concerns regarding the ESF match funding, the implications obviously in the context of the withdrawal of ESF funds. The specific ask is that the Council would make representations to the Department for Communities and DFE in relation to it's just in the latter paragraphs, to confirm that they will continue to provide match funding required to facilitate the ESF projects in 22-23 financial year and the subsequent drawdown, and that in turn would prevent a loss of £20 million in ESF funding to Northern Ireland. So if members were content, Chair, we could make representations accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor McAleer.
Chair, I suppose first to register my disappointment the way that previous topic was handled there, but in relation to this particular one, I'm happy enough to propose both the noting of the letter and also the actions requested. And I might suggest as well, although I presume network personnel themselves are doing this, contacting the 4 other district council areas just to lend our support to them, because the figures that they state on even at the top of page 2 in their letter, the families and individuals that they help, and I have a knowledge of this company in the town here, Southdown, the community house, that it is a very positive thing that they do. So I would be very happy to propose the noting and supporting their cause, and also just addressing maybe supportive letters to the 4 other councils mentioned to encourage them to do likewise. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a seconder for that noting, please? Or course of action? Councillor Paul Blake. Okay, thank you. We will, that's the end of all correspondence. We're now going to move into part 2, confidential matters and matters exempt from publication. So kind of a proposer, please, proposed by Councillor Thompson. Kind of a seconder to move into confidential, please. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly, thank you. Okay. Yeah, because 10 minutes. Right, here we go.
Chair, so during confidential business, we dealt with matters arising from the confidential minutes of the Regeneration and Community Committee on the 9th of November, and there were no matters arising. And members also noted an update in respect of Mid-Southwest Growth Deal region.
Thank you for that, Kim. We're now going, a proposer, I see Josephine's hand up. Can I have a seconder, please, to note that? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Okay, said we'd move on if we had time. We have just under 10 minutes to go into AOB, and I've been approached by two councillors plus the chief executive wants to come in as well. So I will go in the order that I was approached in, and first up is Councillor Howard Thornton.
Thank you, Chair. With the ongoing development of the WebEx software, automatic muting has become the standard for our formal meetings. I believe at times the current system of automatic muting is causing continual problems with delays, the fluidity of meetings, and causing frustration amongst remote users. Whilst it may be useful in diminishing the chances of members leaving their unmute button on, I believe that with the correct compliance of standing orders by all members concerned, there should be a choice exercised by the chairman of council, committee chairs, and indeed subcommittee chairs as to whether to use this new system or not. It also assists greatly with any points of order during meetings. I thereby make a formal proposal that the chairs of formal committees or subcommittees have full discretion from the start of 2022 as to whether to use the facility at their monthly meetings, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thornton. Councillor Baird.
Chair, happy to second that.
Okay. I'm going to let the chief executive in to make comment.
It's just a comment, Chair, obviously how members wish to proceed, but just to note that would then be a difference in practice. Within the chamber, the microphones have to be controlled by the chair. So just to note that there would then be a different practice in terms of the virtual meeting setting.
Okay. Well, you've heard it proposed and seconded that from the 1st of January 2022 that the chairs of the committees and subcommittees make the decision whether they want to use the muting system on the microphones. Is everybody happy with that proposal? No dissent, so that is passed. I will now pass over to the Chief Executive, who had a matter of AOB.
Yes, Chair, thank you. We've received representations from Clogher Valley Rugby Football Club. It's the opportunity to make a presentation to an informal meeting of the council regarding their proposals for community facilities in the area. Hence, there's no particular urgency, Chair, other than they would be keen to get it progressed before, the scheduling progressed so that this could happen in the new year to tie in with their funding applications.
Okay. Could I have a proposal for that, please? Councillor John Coyle, seconded by Councillor Paul Robinson. Thank you. Next, we will go over to Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've two proposals. We'll start with probably the priority one. Last week, the Water Framework Directive statistics for December 2020 were released by Dira, revealing that none of the 450 plus rivers here now meet good status. It notes in the report that water is of fundamental importance for life and our natural environment. The statistics kind of display otherwise or highlight otherwise. I would be proposing that we invite representatives from Dira, from NI Water and from NIEA to come and address the council in relation to the failings across this district area and specifically. They've noted that the measurements now fail, 100% of rivers fail because they include ubiquitous, persistent, bioaccumulative toxic substances. But I think when you read through the report, it's what's missing from it that really is what's concerning. We need to find out what these are, what the level of concentration in the water and plants and animals in the food chain is, the critical threshold in terms of environmental and public health, and which water bodies we're monitoring, which we're not. So, like, having looked through the Water Framework Directive, these UPBTs are not good. So I would be pressing that we invite them as a matter of urgency to come and explain themselves to the council. And this is bearing in mind that at the start of last week, there was also a note in the media about 7 million tonnes of raw sewage being dumped into our rivers and our seas. So we are in a state of crisis here, and we need to get this addressed and rectified. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor, you remember that we did a water down not that long ago, so I hope that I can another trip down to from Ananoma. Councillor O'Coffey?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second that. I think Stormont is presiding over a historic destruction of the integrity of our waterways, and it is genuinely hugely concerning to anyone who has an understanding of their vital role both in the environment but also in public health and public well-being. So I'm very happy. This is additional evidence, and it does make sense that we would bring these down here. I don't know exactly what we will be able to do, but I think we should speak truth to power on this and highlight what is happening. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Deacon, we have 3 minutes left.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to support Councillor McAleer in his proposal. It's truly shocking, Chair. We absolutely need to be assured that our water, which is essential for life, is pure and free from toxins. It's highly concerning, and I support a call to meet the authorities urgently to see what remedial action can be taken. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Maguire?
Caherly, just on the back of information Councillor McAleer has made known at tonight's meeting, I have to say that I'm not familiar with the data. Apologies if it was in the public domain, I didn't see it. And I just wonder, would it be maybe correct procedure that we all are informed of the report or get some further information through the council out to all members, so that then we can all analyse this data and respond accordingly? As I say, it's be unusual just to go on the back of the data issued at an AOB at this stage of the night, when we really need the data to make an informed decision, as was voted last week as well, I believe. So if that's at all possible, Chair, that we all as members receive an update on the report as indicated by Councillor McAleer and make a more informed decision before we would continue or progress this issue.
Okay. Councillor John Coyle, and that's the last speaker I'm taking on this.
I'll second Councillor Maguire's proposal. I would like to see detail of what this is. It is an important issue, and we need to be above it. I haven't seen the document in question, so I'd need to read it and have a clear understanding. Thank you.
Okay. We've obviously 2 proposals here. Councillor McAleer, you're looking back in, but give us a second here. There's obviously a difference of opinion. I'll hand over to the Chief Executive.
Chair, so just a suggestion, I mean, in the report referenced is the update in terms of the Water Framework Directive, and there's been some media reporting on it. We could certainly circulate the report, or alternatively, we could bring it to the January meeting of Environmental Services, which would give members an opportunity to review it. I think the likelihood of us securing a meeting in advance of that, in any case, given the proximity of Christmas is quite unlikely, and that would be the first formal relevant meeting opportunity for the matter to be presented. So if members prefer, we could certainly include that for consideration on the Environmental Services agenda. That would be the other option.
Are you happy enough with that, Councillor Mcclury?
Chair, like it's water, it's an urgent matter. It was widely publicised last week. I'm quite shocked that people haven't heard and aren't aware of it, to be honest. But if the only way it's going to get support is by me withdrawing my proposal and bringing it back to committee, I'll have to do that, because this is too important a vote to lose. So
Okay.
with that in mind, I'm happy enough.
Are you happy enough, Councillor O'Coffey? Yeah. So that we now take Councillor Maguire's proposal, second to be Councillor Coyle, that we get more information and bring it back to committee at the ES in January. Everybody agree with that? Okay, that's passed. Right, Councillor McAleer, you have 1 minute.
Good man. Thank you, Chair. No, just to express a word of congratulations. Starting off, first of all, with my own club, Greencastle, won Division 2 in quite dramatic fashion this Sunday past. But also the Tyrone team that was announced, 8 of the 15 All-Stars there at the start of the weekend, including the Player of the Year award for Tyrone footballers. 2 members from within their own district, Niall Sludden from Dromore and Conor Myler from Omagh. And in fairness to Ahayarn, I have to say Ronan McNamee should have been in that squad as well. But I'd also like to mention Fermanagh Sean Corrigan, who won the Laurie Maher Player of the Year for 2021. His Fermanagh teammate Rory Porteous and Tyrone's Damien Casey also made the champion team of 15. And finally, special congratulations to a member sitting not too far away from me, whose daughter was representing the TG Cahir underdogs against the All-Ireland Ladies champions on Meath. So just to express Council's congratulations, co-gorgeous to those individuals. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, with that, we have come to the end of the meeting, just by the skin of our teeth. Thank you, everybody, for their attendance, and certainly from my behalf, I would like to wish you all a happy Christmas. We have to do it tomorrow night again, but certainly from this committee, a happy Christmas, and hopefully we'll see you all safe and well in January. So good night, everyone.